Alpha Day, welcome everyone to the Guam Congress Building. The Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture is now called to order. Today's Friday, June 23, 2023. In compliance with the open government law, notices for this public hearing were published in the Guam Daily Post and on the Government of Guam Public Notice Portal. On Friday, June 16, 2023, 5-day notice, and the Wednesday, June 21, 23 for the 48-hour notice. In addition to this, a notice was published through KUAM Radio 93.9 FM I-94 on Friday, June 16, 2023. Notices were also sent via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. This hearing is being live streamed on the Guam Legislature's YouTube channel. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and begin by stating their name for record-keeping purposes, as all of these hearings will be transcribed. There are 2 agenda items for today. First, we will have an informational briefing on the status of the CLTC eviction of the Guam Racing Federation on lot number 7161-R1. And the status of the OPA audit on the mineral extraction of lot number 7161-R1. Second agenda item is bill number 56-37 COR, sponsored by Dwayne Therese and Nicolas, Joe S. and Agustin, William A. Parkinson, Roy A. B. Quinata. An act to classify lot number 7161-R1 YIGO, Guam, as a community recreation facility, and to transfer authority of the lot from CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission to the Guam Department of Parks and Recreation. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of my colleagues, beginning with Senator Chris Barnett, Senator Dwayne St. Nicolas, our Legislative Secretary, Senator Amanda Shelton, Senator Roy Quinata, Senator Chris Dwayne. Thank you, colleagues, for being here today. I want to thank, for the informational briefing, I will give an opening statement. We will then hear an update from the CHAMORRO Land Trust, who's represented here today by their Executive Director, Alice Tyron. And we will ask the Public Auditor, who's here, thank you for being here, former Speaker B.J. Cruz, and Vince Dwayne. We've also invited the Attorney General of Guam, so if he comes, he will also be seated up here for this informational briefing. After that, when we get to the bill, all of you who have signed up on the bill will be able to present testimony. All right. So I'm just going to open. Today's informational briefing was scheduled to get updates on the status of lot number 7161-R1, which is the current location of the Guam Raceway. It was leased for 20 years to the Guam Racing Federation, and we'd like to hear the status of the eviction that was issued by his CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission, and the status of the audit being conducted by the public auditor. For the record, I'd like to reiterate that the issue at hand is not about racing activities being conducted on this property. I am not aware of anybody who opposes the racing activities. We all support a racetrack for the community, just as legislatures before us did. What we are here to bring to light today is the execution and management of a lease, and specific terms of that lease with the specific organization that was supposed to be charged with the responsibility of running the racetrack responsibly and transparently on behalf of the racing community and all of the people of Guam. The concerns that will be discussed today affect not just our racing community, but also the CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission, the CHAMORRO Land Trust beneficiaries, the sustainability of our aquifer, and all of the people of Guam's well-being. I'm confident that you will seek the same answers that we are seeking through this informational briefing today. It is the legislature's job to ensure that the people of Guam get fair value on their property while maintaining the sustainability of our precious and finite land resources and protecting the aquifer for future generations. We have heard some concerns about the mineral extraction that has taken place over the years on the property as more information has come to light. So this is a perspective of my committee based on oversight hearings, confirmation hearings, and hearings on bills relative to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission over the past 3 terms. Since 1998, the Guam legislature has supported the racing community through the authorization of tax credits to the Guam Racing Federation of up to $9 million for the development of a raceway and a 20-year license by the Chamorro Land Trust Commission of 250 acres to the Guam Racing Federation. In 2004, the tax credit authority was reduced to $8 million. The license consists of 250 acres. The Guam legislature also recently passed Public Law 34-142 in December of 2018, which authorized an additional 50-year license for the Guam Racing Federation after expiration of the 20-year license that same year. However, the Guam Racing Federation and the Chamorro Land Trust Commission have not come to terms on their negotiation after 4.5 years, and there is no new lease. On January 30, 2023, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission issued a notice of eviction to the Guam Racing Federation. If we could put up the presentation, so I'm putting up some slides here just so we all have a perspective. This is the lot we're talking about. This is the back road to Anderson, is the line that goes diagonally from the bottom left. It's red and white, and all the way up to the top middle of the photo. That's Route 15. So off of Route 15 is the raceway. That is out, and that lot, 7161-R1, is outlined in the bold white line. You can see the track on the bottom. In the middle is the drag strip. And on the top portion of that property, the northernmost portion of the property, you can see some clearing, excavation. It is adjacent to a quarry that is run right now by Smithbridge. All right, next slide. That slide, by the way, was from approximately 2019. This slide was December 2021. So you can see the clearing is quite different. If we could go back to the first slide one more time. This is a slide, I don't know the date that it was taken, but it was used by the Chamorro Land Trust Commission in 2019. And then the next slide, 2021. The next slide is another angle of the 2021. So it doesn't show the outline of the property. Part of what we're seeing as clearing right now on the left side of this photo is part of the quarry run by Smithbridge. And if you can go back to slide number 1, just to look again at where the border, the dark line shows the border between the Smithbridge quarry and the Chamorro Land Trust property. Okay, again, go back to slide 3. All right. Next slide. It's just another angle, aerial view. That road in the middle is the drag strip. We're going to call it the drag strip. I heard it's called also the peninsula. So it ends on the northernmost part of it. It ends near that clearing. Okay. Next slide. All right, now we're going to get a Google Earth 3D image in a second. All right, so they're just going to rotate it around very slowly so you can get, there's Route 15 again. That's in the peninsula, or the drag strip is there. The other racing facilities are also shown. The cliff, of course, and the Smith Bridge Quarry, which is adjacent to clearing on the Chamorro Land Trust property as well. Thank you. Next, we'll have a video. This is a short clip that was shown during one of the confirmation hearings by one of the commissioners. It's about 30 seconds. Wait for it to be. This is a road that has been created through the Chamorro Land Trust racing property. It shows a Smith Bridge truck taking quarry materials through the Chamorro Land Trust property to Smith Bridge. So there's a road that connects from this Chamorro Land Trust racing property through the back to the Smith Bridge facilities. It connects from the quarry of Smith Bridge to Smith Bridge's other properties through a back road. And that truck, by the way, is, sorry, we could just start the video one more time. Just notice the truck. This is the truck I'm trying to talk about later on. I'm calling this a dump truck. Not sure if that's technical, but that's what I'm going to be calling it. Okay, please. Play the whole video. That up there is the edge of the drag strip. The boulders on the right show the border between the Chamorro Land Trust property and the Smith Bridge Quarry. So the drag strip property around it has been excavated down to this level. Thank you. I think we have another video. One more. We have a full room here today. Thank you for all of you who come here. I know you're very interested in the fate of the raceway. All right, this is another view. That's the peninsula up on top, the drag strip, Chamorro Land Trust property. To the right was the border between the Chamorro Land Trust and Smith Bridge. This is just showing the different levels. And I think this is going to go around in 360 degrees. I think this is the quarry. Here we go again. So this is the beginning. This shows the border between the quarry, the raceway, and the cutout around the drag strip. Thank you. If on top of that drag strip, there were, you can see street lights, just to see the size and the dimensions. Those are street lights up there all along the drag strip. I guess there are street lights. Okay, thank you. All right. All right, so again, from my committee's perspective, this is a very brief timeline put together based on oversight hearings and confirmation hearings and other hearings by the committee. So in 1996, Perez Brothers had inquired with the Chamorro Land Trust Commission about lot 7161-1 and 7161-R1 as quarry sites. February 1998, Public Law 24-141 was signed into law. It authorized tax credits for the Guam Racing Federation to build a world-class facility. They capped it at $9 million for the design and construction costs. It anticipated that it would be built on private property, and it gave an exemption from business privilege tax for the private lessor for the entire value of the lease. It allowed the carryover of tax credits, limited liability, assessed a $2 fee for events payable to the government of Guam, and authorized GIDA and the Department of Revenue and Taxation to develop rules and regs for the construction and monitoring of the project, fines for those who take more tax benefit than the value of the materials or services, assigned rights to the private property to the government of Guam, and offset that $9 million tax credit by withholding funding from the Guam Department of Education. Neither the government property nor mineral extraction or quarrying was authorized in this public law. On June 1, 1998, which was 4 months later, the Guam Racing Federation entered into a 20-year license agreement with the CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission. There was no legislative approval or involvement. The terms of the license included compensation of a flat fee set forth in a schedule, or 10% of the gross revenues per month, whichever is greater. The flat compensation began in year 3 at $1,000 per month and escalated up to $4,000 per month in the last 4 years of the 20-year license. The license also allowed for alterations of the property that included but was not limited to removal of topsoil and/or coral, recontouring, and constructing appropriate facilities on the property. 50% of the materials or value thereof shall be the property of the licensor. Also included was termination of the license clause that allows CLTC to determine whether or not it desires the property returned to its pristine condition and would be the sole responsibility of the licensee, Guam Racing Federation, to remove any and all improvements made to the property. 1 year later, in June 1999, Public Law 25-27 was signed and amended Public Law 24-141, and this adopted rules and regulations on the operations of the Guam Raceway Park, which prohibited subleases and mandated that all monitoring and compliance would be done by GIDA. On April 3rd, 2000, so another year later, there was a permit granted to Therese Brothers for clearing only. In June 2002, there was a permit for clearing and grubbing only. So grubbing is defined as the removal of vegetation, including trees, timber, shrubbery, and plants, when said vegetation is dislodged or uprooted from the surface of the ground. In 2003, Guam Racing Federation executed an agreement with Therese Brothers to establish a rock crushing operation on the licensed property and to remove processed coral produced as the result of the grading operations. In April 2004, Public Law 27-85 reduced the tax credits from $9 million to $8 million. From 2001 until 2005, so this is the accounting reports show that money for excess grading materials was transacted between CHAMORRO Land Trust, Guam Racing Federation, and those who were picking up the minerals. There were 3 different companies. On September 2005, Guam Racing Federation applied as the owner of Lot 7161R1 for a clearing and grading permit for the lot 7161-R1. But but the reports, again, from 2001 to 2005 show that excess grading materials were already being removed prior to this 2005 permit. On October 28, 2005, a notice of violation was issued by the Department of Agriculture to the Guam Racing Federation for unauthorized clearing on government property. And it looks to me that this was because of the clear conservation area. In 2008, there was a tax credit accounting by GITA. In 2008, out of the 8 million authorized tax credits, 7.288 had been approved. 7.2 million had been approved. Authorized down 6.4 million. 836 remained available. Out of that, 836,000 remained available. And out of that, pending authorization was 541,000, leaving a balance of 294,000. This was in 2008, so there might be updates after this. At this time, in 2008, these tax credits had gone to AIC International, Bongjo Corporation, Black Construction, Daniel Swavely, Dick Pacific, Dwayne and Associates, EMC Squared Consulting, Hawaiian Rock, Paris Brothers, Smith Bridge, South Pacific, Triple J. In 2010, there was a letter from GITA Administrator Anthony Blas, which was reporting to the legislature on the status of the credits, and had reported that there had never been transmittal of any admission rates or any admission prices, that Guam Racing Federation and GITA's lawyers did not agree as to the effective date of when the admission, $2 admission, was supposed to be turned over to the government of Guam. Racing Federation contended that the effective date is upon completion of the full raceway park. So that was one of the issues discussed in this letter. And then there was a paragraph that says, we would also like to make you aware of a situation that, although has no relevance on the Guam Raceway Park tax credit program, may need your attention. When an application for tax credits is submitted, GITA staff normally conducts a site inspection at the Raceway Park. We've noticed that recently there were many dump trucks waiting to be loaded by Hawaiian Rock heavy equipment on site. Since there have been no tax credits issued since 2008, one may question, one, how are these companies being paid for work they do at the GRP? Two, what is happening to all the aggregate and how much has left the property? And three, which entity, GRF or Government of Guam, should profit from the sale of this aggregate? That was 2010, in June. On December 2010, Public Law 30-204 was passed to amend Section 6 of Public Law 24-141, which would require admissions assessment of 10% for any event held at the park, since the $2 per admission was never completed. The financial independent audits for the CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission from FY 2012 through FY 2016 and FY 20 and FY 2021 all contain a finding due to the lack of adequate internal control policies requiring monitoring and documentation of coral extraction royalties. In June 2016, the CLTC voted to place a moratorium on coral extractions by the GRF and required GRF to provide a validated and certified method of determining actual coral materials extracted to be reported to the CLTC quarterly. In February 2018, the CLTC minutes show that a site inspection conducted on February 8 and 13, 2018 by the CLTC found that GRF was not compliant with Public Law 30-204, that's the admissions law, Had not, there were no quarterly reports regarding event admission, that Guam Adventures was conducting business at the site, and I guess that's an unauthorized sublease, and filling and grading being conducted by Hawaiian Rock and Smithbridge despite the moratorium. Additionally, Dueñas Camacho and Associates prepared or represented GRF and informed the CLTC that Hawaiian Rock had overgraded and was instructed to backfill. May 2018, this is May 2018. Resolution 2018-06 was adopted by the Chamorro Land Trust Commission that stated, quote, whereas the GRF license agreement will expire on May 31, 2018 with no remaining options to extend. However, the resolution also stated, quote, whereas on May 3, 2018, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission reviewed and approved by motion to authorize a month-to-month extension of the existing Guam Racing Federation license agreements for its existing terms not to exceed 1 year. That was in May 2018. In December 2018, the Guam legislature passed Public Law 34-142, This was sponsored by Senator Tom Atta and others, and it authorized the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to lease the lot for a period of up to 50 years for commercial purposes, to include the operation of a raceway, related support facilities, and various outdoor events. CLTC shall give the right of first refusal to the current licensee, the GRF, provided that if granted right of first refusal, GRF must express its intention in writing to the Executive Director of CLTC no later than 15 days from the date of enactment. Notwithstanding any other provisions of law, the legislature authorized CLTC to negotiate the terms of the lease for the lot, provided that such negotiated lease shall be submitted to the legislature for approval by statute. If the current licensee, GRF, exercises the right of first refusal, the CLTC shall, within 180 days from the GRF exercise of the right of first refusal, submit the lease negotiated with the GRF to the legislature for approval by statute. Except as specifically provided in this act, conditions of the lease shall comply with 21 GCA 75122, and notwithstanding any other provision of law, mineral extraction is prohibited and shall not be included in the terms of the lease. Negotiations continued between the Chamorro Land Trust and the Guam Racing Federation well beyond the 180 days. In June 2019, Guam Racing Federation presented CLTC with a license proposal that, according to CLTC's counsel, conflicted with Public Law 34-142 in 2 areas, including extraction of minerals, and cost of the license would be 10% of the appraised value. This proposal, according to Guam Racing Federation, was drafted by Attorney Cunliffe. In June 2019, CLTC passed a motion to allow the Guam Racing Federation continued occupancy based on previous license terms on a month-to-month basis for 6 months. December 2019 passed a motion to provide the right of entry from January 2019 to May 2020. In July 2020, DPW issued a permit renewal denial to Smithbridge for grading permit on the following grounds. The grading permit expired on June 28, 2020. The conditional approval under the Department of Land Management ended. The grading permit issued was not equivalent to the extraction activities. DPW required Guam Land Use Commission approval to include GRF's plans for reclamation and all agency requirements, including handling storm runoff, fault protection from along the perimeter of the quarry operation, and erosion control plan. The 2020 and 2021 audits continued to show the finding of the lack of adequate internal control policies requiring monitoring and documentation of coral extraction royalties. In September 2021, the CLTC acting director issued a cease and desist order, citing that mineral extraction exceeded what was approved by the board. According to recent testimony during a confirmation hearing by one of the commissioners, accompanied by video and photos, a site visit to the property was made in April 2022, revealed that there were questionable activities on the property consistent with mineral extraction. October 26, 2022, I sent a request for legal opinion to the Attorney General, Leven Camacho, on the legality of the May 3, 2018 and subsequent CLTC extensions of the GRF expired lease beyond the initial 20-year term. There were several questions included. Those are provided in the Senator's packets. One of them was, did the Commission illegally allow, approve an extension of mineral extraction after Public Law 34-142 prohibited said extraction? Is mineral extraction authorized on Lot 7161-R1? This letter was unanswered, and I reissued one on January 23, 2023 to the current Attorney General, Douglas Moylan. On January 30, 2023, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission issued a 30-day notice of eviction to the Guam Racing Federation. In February 2023, I sent a letter requesting CLTC to extend a 90-day extension on the eviction notice to allow the racing and sports events, including smoking wheels and other events, to take place through April 2023. In February 16, 2023, the CLTC moved to extend the notice of eviction to 90 days, which would end on June 2, 2023. On May 18, 2023, the Guam Racing Federation requested an additional extension, which was denied by the CLTC. Since then, Guam Racing Federation has publicly stated through the media that, quote, "We have decided not to move, and if they're going to evict us, they'll have to take us to court. We're doing this all on our attorney's advice," unquote. One of the accountings that I could find from 1998, the license began in 1998. And I could find an accounting from 2001 to 2016. That's 15 years, which provided that 4,680,186 cubic yards of material was extracted by Hawaiian Rock, Perez Brothers, and Smith Bridge over that period of 15 years. That 4,680,186 total cubic yards is approximately 6,552,000 tons. I looked this up, and one of those dump trucks can carry from 10 to 16 cubic yards, depending on the weight of the material. If you calculate it by 10 cubic yards, 4,680,000 cubic yards divided by 10 cubic yards per truck was an approximate 468,018 truckloads. You divide that by the 15-year period of the lease, it's an approximately 31,000 truckloads per year. You divide that by 365 days per year, it's approximately 85.4 truckloads per day, 365 days a year for 15 years. The CLTC received $2.2 million for that period of 15 years. That was at a rate of 25 cents a cubic yard for a certain time period and 75 cents a cubic yard for the remaining time period. So I took the 2 million and I divided it up by the 468,000 truckloads, and it gives an average of $4.27 that went to the CLTC per truckload for 468,000 truckloads over the past 15 years up to 2016. So this does not account for 2017 to 2023. In 2021, Henry Simpson wrote a letter to CLTC acknowledging that the current market price is $2 per cubic yard, and that $1 per cubic yard would go to the CLTC. On February 15, 2023, I requested for an audit of the mineral extraction on lot 7161-R1 YIGO. That audit is ongoing with the Office of Public Accountability, and I've invited them here if they could give us an update. Again, all of this began with legislative authority, $8 million in tax credits to build a world-class racing facility. And with that, I'd like to invite the chairperson, the executive director of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to please give us an update on the eviction notice, or your eviction proceedings, or the status of that. And before that, I think Senator Brown, you came in after I recognized everyone. Senator Brown, thank you for being present. Did I recognize you? Thank you. Senator Barnett? Okay, thank you. Yes. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Alice Tyhern. I am the Administrative Director for the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. I'll provide a basic timeline with regard to what occurred with the eviction and how we went about it. On January 30, 2023, a letter to the Guam Racing Federation Attorney Jeffrey A. Cook was sent to inform him that the CLTC Board of Commissioners made a motion and approved by majority to issue a 30-day notice of eviction to the Guam Racing Federation effective February 1, 2023. On February 16, 2023, CLTC Board of Commissioners made a motion to extend the 30-day notice of eviction to 90 days to allow for the Smoking Wheels event to take place. The effective date of the 90-day extension was March 2, 2023 to June 2, 2023. On May 16, 2023, Guam Racing Federation requests from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission an additional 90-day extension of its eviction. Their reason is that they were waiting for the OPA report on the Guam Racing Federation performance and the public hearing on Bill 5637. On May 18, 2023, at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission regular board meeting, the CLTC commissioners did not approve the request for extension. On June 2, 2023, a letter to the Guam Racing Federation was sent to remind them that they must vacate lot 7161-R1. On June 13, 2023, Chamorro Land Trust Commission staff, commissioners.
Sorry.
That's right.
I'd like to recognize the President, Senator Joseph Agustin. My apologies. Please proceed.
That's all right, Madam Chair. Thank you. On June 13, 2023, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission staff, commissioners, and legal counsel conducted a site visit to lot 7161-R1. A subtenant was still on site. A letter was sent to the subtenant informing them that they would have to vacate the premises. A site visit was conducted to assess damage to the property and ensure that there weren't any trespassers. That being said, CLTC has not locked the gates as yet. We went up there to make an assessment. Because of the weather, we could not assess the other side of the property, which had, I believe, Smoking Wheels activity. On July 13th, 2023, for July 13th, 2023, we have a scheduled CLTC meeting, and the commissioners are set to discuss the future of lot 7161-R1. There are still assessments being made with regard to the damage to the property, what is due to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission from the Guam Racing Federation. So that's still ongoing, Madam Chair. I hope this addresses your question with regard to updating where we are with that eviction.
Thank you. I will allow my colleagues to ask questions in a short while. If I could hear from the public auditor, Speaker Cruz, Judge Cruz, or Vince.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with me today is Vincent Dwayne, who's the Supervising Accountability Auditor 3, Supervising Accountability Auditor for the office. He's also the Auditor and Supervising Auditor of the Raceway Extraction Audit, and so I'll have him give you a status.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Speaker, BJ Cruz. Okay, so regarding the status of the audit, we're currently, actually, I guess going back to, so we have various phases of an audit that we have to go through, and we conducted all of our interviews with all of the individuals that were presented to us, but not only by CLTC, but also by the Guam Racing Federation. We're currently in the report phase. We're drafting the report. We do anticipate that when that report is drafted, we have our processes, right? Internal control processes, quality assurance. But before that, we also have to give an opportunity to management to review and respond to not only the findings, but also the recommendations. But like I said, we're currently in the report writing phase. I do know that we closed out pretty much all of the additional work that needed to be done. Just I think the day before the storm, on that Monday right before the storm, and it was our anticipation to have a draft ready by June, by the end of this month. However, there were certain things that we were going through in the office. So we do anticipate having a draft and presenting it to CLTC management by maybe another couple of weeks, probably by mid-July. And then what we do after we give them the opportunity is to review, and actually we're going to meet with them to go over the findings. They have 10 working days to respond to our audit after that. So anticipated release of the audit, I would estimate the end of July.
Thank you very much. As you know, I tried to put this hearing off until that audit was completed, but we have a 120-day expiration of public hearing rights here, and if I didn't hold a public hearing, the author of the bill would hold a public hearing without our committee, so we had to proceed at this time. So I am looking forward to the results of that audit. Will the CHAMORRO Land Trust they said they, in the media that they would not leave the property unless you go to court. Does the CHAMORRO Land Trust intend to go to court?
Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, I don't think it's ever our intention to go to court. However, given this matter, there are many issues that we are discussing and seeking legal guidance.
Has the CLTC received any interest in the property from other organizations interested in keeping a raceway there?
If I'm not mistaken, we received at the beginning an email, one email or two, parties interested in running the raceway. I can't recall offhand who they were. I'll have to get that from my PC.
All right. I'm going to allow the senators to ask questions. Again, we will have the hearing on Bill 56 immediately after this. So Senator Brown, Vice Chair of my committee, do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and certainly welcome to all of you that are here today. This puts us in a very interesting position because I was here. I see Senator Casper Bauer also, who was here at the time. We actually authorized legislation to allow for the Land Trust to enter into the agreement for the construction of the Raceway Park. But now we also have a cloud over this issue, which concerns me certainly, and I think probably would concern members of our public, is we want to ensure that there's the proper management of the CLTC resource under this lease. And I think it's important that we be provided that information. We certainly look forward to the public auditor's findings to determine if there was proper use of the property. If there's not, then that brings a bigger issue. And I understand many of our residents are here who are very supportive of the raceway and would like to see the raceway continue. I think we would all like to see that. But at the same time, we have to make sure there's been no mismanagement or misuse or abuse of land trust property. And I think we're at a very interesting juncture here where we have the interest of the racetrack being brought up against the interest and control of the land that is currently under the land trust. And I think it's very difficult to proceed in determining how we should act on this until that information is provided, because I do not want to see a cloud covered on this issue if there has been any mismanagement or if there has been any abuse of this property. And we understand the intent, of course, in doing this was to be able to provide revenue to the land trust so that you can be able to move forth with being able to fund your mandates so that the land trust properties that have been leased out to our residents that are eligible for infrastructure and other things that are needed to properly manage the Chamorro Land Trust. And while Chamorro Land Trust has been challenged in some areas, nevertheless, we should always strive to meet those requirements. So I don't have a lot of questions. I mean, I don't think you're in a position right now, probably, Alice, to let us know what the Land Trust Commission is going to do legally. But for me, as a legislator, and certainly before I entertain any other, and I know we'll have a hearing on the bill, to try and transfer the authority of the land trust property. But maybe I should ask you, because I don't know if you're going to be here to answer that. What is the position of the Land Trust Commission here now with regards to the property being taken from you? What is your thoughts on that?
As the Administrative Director for the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, I am opposed to Bill 56-37. I am opposed to the taking of Chamorro Land Trust Commission Chamorro Land Trust property away from the beneficiaries of Chamorro Land Trust. I am not opposed to racing or the activities of the racetrack. Taking the property away does not address that concern. So as the Administrative Director, I am opposed. My job is to protect the interest of our beneficiaries, and to allow that, I would not be fulfilling that obligation. I submitted a copy of a resolution 2023-02, I believe it is, from the commissioners who voted in opposition to this, to the transfer of CLTC lot 7161-R1 to the Department of Parks and Recs.
Is there any other review being conducted by the Land Trust Commission aside from the audit that the public auditor is now undertaking with regards to the status of the property? I mean, we understand certainly from the summary provided by the speaker that there's obvious concern about the extraction of gravel or minerals from the property that may have far exceeded maybe what was authorized, or whether or not what was taken is properly compensated, or was the commission properly compensated. And this has been a long-standing issue. I did spend a period of time almost 12 or 13 years ago when I was at the University of Guam, actually working with the Chamorro Land Trust at the request of the Land Trust of the University of Guam. And that was an issue back then as to whether or not the gravel being extracted was properly compensated, because we don't know who was there monitoring. We don't know if anyone was there monitoring or has been there monitoring the amount of gravel that's being extracted. So I assume this is going to be down on the calculation of the area and what used to be there and what is there now. Is there any other review that is underway by the Land Trust Commission with regards to this issue, or any other investigation you may be doing to determine if there are issues of concern? And I've not read your resolution, but does your resolution outline what those issues are on the basis of perhaps not wanting to renegotiate or continue the lease with the existing leaseholder?
The resolution, to some degree. Is there an investigation ongoing? We're working with our legal counsel, which is the Attorney General's office, on anything else, how to best legally proceed. That's one. With regard to Chamorro Land Trust, we have, I have my team. We're looking at our books to try and gather as much information as possible with regard to monies that are owed to the Chamorro Land Trust, and of course doing our site visit to take a look at the damage that was incurred or that was done to the property to make that assessment. So that's where we are.
The speaker had mentioned that there was a portion of the property that was conservation property. Is that the case? Is that portion under your jurisdiction, or is it in the Department of Agriculture? Do you know who has jurisdiction over the conservation area that may have been impacted?
If I'm not mistaken, that's CLTC property. The Department of Agriculture did step in and provide, I believe it was a citation I can't remember off the top of my head, to the Guam Racing Federation. And if I'm not mistaken, they were supposed to return the property back to its original state. So it was a huge degradation of that piece of land.
Do we know how much area was impacted?
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that, Senator.
I think it would be helpful if you provide the committee with that, because we'd be very concerned, because, I mean, it would be a Herculean task to return the property back to its original status, if not impossible. I mean, the, development of limestone forests occurs over many, many, many hundreds of years, and there's probably impossible to do that, but there may be the other type of mitigation that could happen to try and address that issue. So beyond that, there's no other action by CLTC? And why hasn't CLTC taken any legal action prior to this time?
Because we are working with our legal counsel. We will take action as soon as we've received their guidance. It's under discussion.
I have one last question to you. Is the commission still open to continuing to maintain the property as a raceway park if the issues are cleared with the existing tenant, or if there's interest out there for another interested party to lease it out for the very same purpose of continuing to operate and maintain the racetrack? Is the commission open to that?
I'm going to say yes. The commission has never opposed these racing activities. What we need to do at this point in time is take a look at the entire area and find the best legal course of action to address. If it means sectioning off, surveying it, putting that section just for racing activities, et cetera, taking the other portions and for agricultural purposes or building homes. So that's where we are. The commissioners, this is an ongoing discussion with our commissioners.
Well, I certainly appreciate your response. I'm sure there are other questions that will be asked, but I have no questions for the public auditor. We certainly look forward to your audit findings, and certainly from there, I guess we can determine how to proceed, but thank you for taking the time to be here. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Brown. Vice Chair. Senator Dwayne.
Madam Chair. Welcome to everyone. I don't think there's going to be a resolution today, but I think this is going to be an ongoing discussion, and I welcome the comments from the current CLTC director in terms of possibly reviewing an opportunity to mitigate this issue going forward. I guess one question I have, because I've taken the liberty to meet with the current occupiers of the property under the tenants and the agreement, and I've reviewed several different preliminary audits, one provided by Dwayne Camacho and Associates. I'm just wondering, has the current board members, or in your assuming your role as having been appointed, have you found any documentation or any audits in terms of reflecting site? See, there's a difference, and even in Dwayne's, which I think one of the senators may read into the record today, there is testimony in support of this bill as proposed, but they write that there's a difference between a discussion on mineral extraction versus site preparation, and as part of an agreement, and there's a preliminary audit that's referenced. Have you seen any documentation with regard to that?
A preliminary audit?
Yeah, an audit that was done independently. I believe it was solicited by the current tenant, and Dwayne Camacho Associates prepared it. Have you seen any documentation with regard to that?
I believe we have that on record.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
So you've at least seen.
I've seen I believe there was a report from Dwayne and Associates. I can't remember exactly what's in it, but
Okay.
there was a report, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So I think it'll be interesting. I don't know if you or other members will be staying back for the bill itself, but there will be some testimony read into the record with reference to that. And I believe maybe representatives from the track may come up and discuss that as well. So I just wanted to make sure that was on the record. Mr. Speaker, should I address Vincent Dueñas? Okay, so whomever may answer. So I don't know if this is out of protocol, and if it is, feel free that the answer may not be available. But have you interviewed with Dwayne Camacho Associates at all in this audit preparation?
I can confirm we did not, but we did see the report.
You did see the report?
Yeah, it's in the record, yeah, that we received.
Okay, good.
That not only, I think, Guam Racing Federation provided that to us, and as well as the CLTC.
Okay, that was going to be my follow-up question. So I'm sure your audit is, you know, probably
It does include, yeah,
does
I could say
include-
that it does include
the Raceway
allude
Parks
to the
presentation.
reports, yes.
Okay. Well, I think that's going to be very important because, you know, I mean, as a senator, as somebody who gets invited to meet with constituents from all different, you know, whether it's the CLTC to call us to say, sit through this meeting and, you know, we'd like you to gather the information. I'll meet with anybody who has, you know, information to provide. I can say that in my meeting with the Guam Raceway Park representatives and in my review of their documentation, I think there's going to be a very valuable dialogue in terms of what is perceived and what may be the reality in terms of the site preparation for the track and the requirements for them to prepare. So I look forward to that, and I look forward to this discussion as it goes forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. So, for the record, there was a Guam Land Use Commission in the the Dwayne, Camacho and Associates, Inc. has been involved with the raceway plans since the beginning. They developed, under contract with the GRF, the master plan. They applied to the Guam Land Use Commission for the conditional use permit, at that time estimating 2 million cubic yards to be extracted. And as I read earlier, there's been at least 4 million cubic yards extracted in that period of 15 years prior to 2017. All of that, Dwayne, and even in some of the meetings, Dwayne and Associate represents the company. But we will hear their testimony soon. So, Senator Roy Quinata?
No comment. I'm going to support the legislation. Thank you.
All right, Senator Shelton? Okay, thank you. Senator Nicolas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker. I have a question for Ms. Tyring. Ma'am, the original landowner, is there a original landowner for this particular lot?
I'm not familiar with the original, if there's an original landowner.
Right, yeah.
Belongs to CLTC.
CLTC, oh, okay. Was it previously Crown land? That's what I'm trying to get to.
No, not to our
is it
knowledge.
Crown land?
If it were Crown land, it would have been
was
given
it-
to.
Or did it belong to original landowner that the government may have condemned it in some way?
I'm not familiar with that history. Sorry, Senator. I can get back to you on that. I do know if it were Crown lands, that it would have gone to ancestral lands.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I don't know. Oh, one more thing. The mineral extraction that they're claiming that is going on, was that happening on CLTC land where the raceway track, or is that adjacent private property?
There is adjacent private property, and I understand that there's extraction going on there. However, extraction also took place on CLTC property adjacent to those private properties.
Are you familiar with what areas were extracted?
Yes, so you have, I believe it's Perez property, and then Smith Bridge in the backside. So the extraction was taking place, if you see the drag strip, there's a portion on the bottom, it's a little triangle. If I'm not mistaken, extraction was taking place there and further on the other side.
And was the government properly compensated for that extraction?
Not to my knowledge, no. We're still gathering information with regard to compensation.
And was that that extraction in that area, was it important to the I guess the maintenance of the raceway?
Based on what we've seen, no.
So it's just
You have the drag strip. They cut the cliffside down. Then they filled it, contrary to the agreement, with things that ought not. They brought in material to fill the area to try and bring it back up. Nothing happened with the drag strip. It's the same length.
so it's just the perimeter. of the drag strip is what was?
That's just one area, the drag strip area.
Okay.
So based on what I've seen, just in the inspection of it, it didn't look like it was used to extend.
Okay.
The drag strip, the entire racing area looks the same as it did for many years.
Have you done any other investigation according to the information provided by one of the CHAMORRO Land Trust board members? Did you ever conduct an investigation as to his accusations claim regarding extraction? Is there anybody physically went up there and taken a look at the property of what was taken out according to that accusation?
We had individuals from the staff go out, take pictures, visit the area, the CLTC property,
Okay.
take pictures of where the mineral extraction was taking place,
Okay.
pictures of items brought in to backfill.
Okay.
So yes, the team did go out.
So
Backfilling, yeah.
Okay. And was that ever, all that information, was that also part of the reason why we are trying to remove the tenants? Is that part of the, was that part of the reason why we're here today is because some of that investigation that has gone on?
The tenants were evicted for not complying with the agreement
Okay.
and the lease that they had with the CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I have no further questions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator.
Thank you very much, Senator Nicolas. Senator San Agustin? Senator Barnett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming out, OPA, and also Mrs. Tyron. I wanted to ask, I guess I'll just start with the eviction. So you said that the tenant was evicted for violating the conditions of the lease? Yeah. Can
Yes,
you
Senator.
describe the process for eviction for CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission tenants or lessees?
Are you talking about residential, commercial?
Commercial, yeah.
Commercial. It's, my understanding is there's discussion at the commission, the commissioners discuss. The staff, if there's a violation on the lease, will bring it before the commissioners, they'll discuss it, and then we issue a notice.
So you issue a notice of eviction, and then in your experience, if you have had experience in evicting commercial tenants, what usually happens after that notice of eviction is delivered?
So they're given an X amount of days to clear out, and then CHAMORRO Land Trust staff will go out and inspect, as we did, to ensure that things are in order, take a look at environmental issues that we would have to hold the tenant liable for.
And what was the date of the eviction again?
The letter was signed in January, 30
And then there was an
days
extension. So what was the date of the extension?
till June 2nd,
June
2023.
2nd. Okay. So you said after an eviction, the CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission usually goes in and inspects a property. Is this after the tenant or lessee has vacated the premises?
Yes. So CHAMORRO Land Trust, in this case, June 2nd was the eviction date. They should have left the property. CHAMORRO Land Trust went out, I believe, June 13th to inspect the property to see if there are any trespassers, if they're still there. We found a subtenant there, and so a letter was subsequently sent to the subtenant informing the subtenant, you need to leave. And they were given so many days to clear out. Since June 13, we have not gone out to do any further inspection.
So is it your understanding that the Guam Racing Federation is still occupying that territory despite an eviction notice?
So we didn't see Guam Raceway there because of their comments in the media. A lot of these issues are with our legal counsel.
Right. And just for everyone watching, the comment they had made in the media was that they were not going to vacate the premises, and that was under the advice of their attorney.
That's my understanding.
Do you know who their attorney is?
Cunliffe and the organization of Cunliffe and Cook, Randy Cunliffe and Jeffrey Cook.
Is it a little troubling for you that they're represented by a firm that the governor's husband is a part of? Or do you feel any undue influence in being able to execute your duly sworn duties?
I do not feel that there is a conflict. Lawyers have a standard of ethics that they need to comply with. With regard to it influencing my ability to do my duty, if it hasn't been clear yet, I have been standing in defense of the CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission and our beneficiaries. It has not affected my ability to make any judgment, and of course, my current bosses are the CHAMORRO Land Trust Commissioners, and I will stand in defense of our beneficiaries.
Thank you for that, ma'am. But, it is what it is. It's Guam. And, I mean, it's reasonable to assume that if an entity is being represented by the husband of the governor, that, it might make it a little difficult for you to do your job. So I do commend you and the resolution. So where are we now if they're refusing to vacate the premises and you're waiting on advice from your legal counsel? What would be the next move? Have you tried forcibly removing the tenant, changing the locks, that kind of thing?
We are waiting for legal counsel guidance. We are not
Is
going
that the normal procedure?
I'm very legal reliant, and I don't want to do anything. First of all, I don't want to be a hostile landlord. Second of all, I want to ensure that we are legally protected. My job is to protect our beneficiaries, our commissioners, our team, the CLTC agency. That being said, I've gone to our legal counsel to seek the best legal course of action to take in light of everything that's been said in the public.
What would, let's say, if the Guam Racing Federation were to vacate the premises, what would happen to the property? Would it get dropped back into the land trust inventory, or would it be made available for, as you said, there was a couple emails you got from interested parties who wanted to run that property as a racetrack. So what's the process after the tenant is removed, if they're removed?
So lot 7161-R1 is part of CLTC inventory. Now, the commissioners have an ongoing discussion with regard to how to approach what to do with the property moving forward. That being said, we've also sought legal counsel. I've spoken to legal counsel and I've asked, we need your guidance to ensure that we are protected and the decision that the commissioners make is within the parameters of the law and our authority.
And so, again, if this property goes back into the inventory, and let's say that I had a group of, racers, right? Because we're talking about saving the track, and we wanted to save the track, but my group of racers didn't have this cloud, this Cascao cloud hanging over me. You know what I mean? Would I be able then to take over or apply for the lease, and the track would be saved, right? Because it seems to me the issue here is not the track, and it's not saving the track. I think that the Federation has been successful in conflating the issues, and the issues are, saving the track, which everybody wants to save the track. But I think at least for myself, where I'm at is I'm not comfortable in allowing the Federation to continue to manage the track, given that they have, it's very questionable. One of my colleagues said accusation. I think that it's pretty factual based on the evidence that we have collected here, that there has been mining that was above and beyond. I was looking at some of the letters here, and Mr. Simpson had said that they had gotten ahead of themselves in removing the mineral from this property. And I know that the lease allowed for clearing, grading, and grubbing, but not quarrying, right? And what I saw was quarrying. And so I think that the issue here is that the Raceway Federation has violated the lease, but they're continuing to try and remain in charge of this property and telling all of these racers who are caught in the crossfire that, oh, in order to save the track, we have to preserve the Raceway Federation as the lessee of this property, which I don't necessarily agree is true. And I think that in order to have a productive discussion, we really can't move forward until everyone understands that these are, at least in my opinion, two separate issues. Would you agree with that?
Yes, there are two separate issues. As I've stated before, and the commissioners have stated time and time again, and it's going to be in my statement on the bill, they don't oppose racing. What we need to look at is how are we going to deal. This is a huge piece of property. It's almost 230 acres, I believe it is. And there's only, or 215, it's a huge piece of property. Only a portion of that has the raceway, the drag strip, and the go-kart, right? So the commissioners can take up in discussions portioning out the property. So those are things that we need to look at to ensure that we can legally do it and financially be able to get this done. Yep. So there is no opposition to the race track or the racetrack staying open. If we can get somebody, we RFP it out, can get somebody to run it, yeah.
I know also I'd seen comments in the media from, I believe it was from you, where you were talking about entertaining other uses for this property, but just for clarity's sake, are you talking about entertaining this property for other uses outside of where the racetrack is? Because I think that when people read that, maybe they got the idea that, oh, if we, if the eviction carries through, then the whole property would then be used entirely for something else.
I believe one of the discussions at our commission meeting is our commissioners were looking at surveying the property and maybe breaking it up so that there could be different uses of that property. And I think I recall that from our meeting. So they're not closed to that at all. So to use it for other reasons, yeah. That's one of the discussions, is dividing up the property. It's huge. Yeah.
Can I just go back to what the lease allowed, which was clearing, grading, and grubbing, right? And you saw the pictures. I know I was up at the property the other day. Can you describe what you see where, the steep cliffs, where the drag strip is? It's like 80 to 100 foot. Is that quarrying, in your opinion?
It wasn't clearing, grubbing, or grading. It was digging. My understanding of clearing is you clear the land of trees. Grubbing, I'm not too familiar with grubbing, and grading, the same with grading, right? Is you're basically just clearing it to put something there. When we visited the property, you have, as an example, the drag strip, and there is a huge cliff. What had happened was that cliff actually goes further down because it was backfilled, trying to restore it to its to its level prior to the digging and or quarrying that occurred, right? So if you walked onto the property, we drove onto it, and you could see foreign material, which is contrary to the agreement. They're not supposed to backfill with foreign material. We weren't supposed to bring anything in. So you see cement or pavement, asphalt that was used to backfill underneath the drag strip area, that cliff. I hope I answered your question, Senator.
You did. Thank you. Let's talk about the money. You had said earlier that you didn't believe that the CHAMORRO Land Trust was compensated. Did you mean at all or fully for the amount of cascal that was taken from the people's land?
I believe fully. There may have been some compensation, a little bit of compensation, but there was nothing that we could. There was no, as the financial audit came, there was no internal controls. We relied on the tenant, the lessee, to be forthcoming with regard to anything that was collected. To date, we haven't received payment for smoke and wheels. So whenever there's an activity, the tenant, the lessee, is supposed to remit payment to the Chamorro Land Trust.
As that, because full disclosure, I've hosted probably like 1 million events at the track. I love the racers, love the racing community, always have a great time there. But, it's common knowledge that they host EIFs and smoking wheels and all types of other different events. So previous events, did you guys receive, let's describe, how does it work? Do you get a percentage of the gate, or do they just tell you, hey, we made this much money and here's your Chinsuli, or?
If I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to be per person that comes in, and we're given a certain amount, or 10%, whichever is greater. Yeah.
So if I pay $20 to go to an event, the Chamorro Land Trust is supposed to get $2? Or
10%.
10%?
Whichever is greater.
Right, okay. And so have you guys ever been in receipt of any funds for the events, not necessarily for the Cascao?
I don't recall. I know that since being on board the past few events, we haven't seen any remission of, what are they called, entrance fees. Like they had another event, I believe it was a Honda event. We haven't seen anything. The smoking wheels, we haven't seen anything. So I hadn't received anything, to my knowledge. Have they received from previous? I can't say.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because last year I'd hosted, it was like a youth racing event, and the organizer of the event were sharing with me that they had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars just to use the property, and these are racers. I was like, what? These are kids. How do you get charged for that? But they were charged and they did pay, but you guys didn't receive any of that.
I don't know. For that specific event, I'm not sure. I can look into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I apologize.
Okay. Well, thank you, ma'am, for your answers. I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just to confirm, the license is for 250 acres. That's 1 million square meters. And the last lease terms prior to expiration was $4,000 a month. So, Senator San Agustin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ms. Tyrone, when did the license expire before the month-to-month started? What was the year?
I believe the license expired in 2018.
2018, we had a hearing here. You weren't then the director, you were, I think, correction, you were Gura or Guam Housing, correct?
In 2018?
Yeah.
No, sir, I was in the private sector.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any record of anything that happened after that? After 2018, up to today, 5 years later?
Any record as in?
Any record of any event of collection of money and anything paid to Chamorro Land Trust? Do you have any record?
Not with me. I can get
No,
whatever we
is
have.
there any record of it? Because the auditor is going to
I'm
be
sure
doing
there
something.
is.
Okay. The reason why I'm leading to that is because my colleague asked the question, there's been events that happened. Has any Chamorro Land Trust people were present when the events were happening to make sure that you knew what was going in and what was being collected? Or was it a standby and wait for the response from them?
So I can't speak to what occurred prior to me coming on board.
Right.
I do know in the last event, I believe it was Smoking Wheels, that we had one of our staff members go out and actually count, do a manual count of people coming in. He actually went in and they weren't issuing receipts, which would be a record. They were just issuing bans, if I'm not mistaken. So for that event, which I was present for, we had somebody go in and count.
Okay.
And took pictures.
Okay. When did you take over Chamorro Land Trust? I just want to be very specific.
I believe it was, the board approved me February 26th, I think it was, this year.
I think it was earlier than that because I did write to you a letter on February 10th.
Oh, no, it's, I was acting.
You were acting.
I was acting beginning January 23rd, and then officially appointed by the board in February, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, do you remember the letter I sent to you?
No, sir.
You don't remember the letter?
No, sir.
Okay, I would ask you to ask your staff to resurrect that letter. I ask you to basically go back and sit down with the Federation and come up with some negotiation. Settle whatever the issue is. because I'm going to tell you right now, and in the public's listening, I'm here to testify, I'm here to support the bill. In 2018, I was in support of the racetrack continuing. I'm here to continue the racetrack, stay there. If it has to move, then it'll move. Until I see activity coming from CHAMORRO Land Trust to do what needs to be done on all the properties, 5 years later, it's unacceptable. And then when I wrote the letter on February 10, 2023, I asked that there should be negotiation to continue the federation. I haven't got a response. February, March, April, May, June, July. Never mind about the typhoon. I'm not going to use typhoon as an excuse. Because I still have to do my job. And I expect everybody else to do what they need to do. So with that, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm here to support the bill when you get to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator San Agustin. Yeah. In Public Law 25-27, which amended Public Law 24-141, the original tax credit law for GRF. This Public Law 25-27 clearly stated it is GIDA who is the administrator for the master plan for enforcing and monitoring, and that the CHAMORRO Land Trust is the beneficiary of the proceeds. All right. All right, there being no other questions, I want to thank you both for your work and for your testimony on updating us, and I'm looking forward to the update, especially from the auditors on this. And could you just keep the legislature informed of your plans for this lot, please? By the way, so Public Law 34, this was the most recent public law passed, authorizing the 50-year lease with GRF or anyone else. It was clear that the CHAMORRO Land Trust was authorized to lease lot 7161R1 in the municipality of YIGO for a period up to 50 years for commercial purposes, to include the operation of a raceway, related support facilities, and various outdoor events. And if they were given the right to first refusal, but there's nothing in there that prevents further negotiations of other parties. All right. All right, thank you, Cesar Masi. So we're now going to move into the second part of our hearing today. Second agenda items, Bill number 56-37, COR, introduced by Senator Dwayne T.D. Nicolas, Joe San Agustin, William A. Parkinson, Roy A.B. Quinata. An act to classify lot number 7161-R1, YIGO, Guam, as community recreation facility and to transfer authority of the lot from CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission to the Guam Department of Parks and Recreation. We will have the sponsor introduce the bill. That would be Senator Dwayne Nicolas. I'd like to ask that CHAMORRO Land Trust, if you, since you're already here, if you'd like to sit at the table first. I know there are commissioners here as well. You're welcome to also come to the table and provide testimony. And if there's anyone from Parks and Rec, if they could come. I think I got a letter that, well, I'll talk about that later. So to introduce the bill, Senator Nicolas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker. Thank you all for being here today. This is bill number 56-37, authored by me, Dwayne Nicolas, sponsored by Joe San Agustin, William Parkinson, and Roy B. Quinata. An act to classify lot 7161R, YIGO, Guam, as a community recreation facility and to transfer authority of the lot from Chamorro Land Trust Commission to the Guam Department of Parks and Recreation. I actually went up there to the raceway, and I couldn't believe what I saw. I saw all the many families, you know, come out to enjoy the raceway. You got so many different people out there from every ethnicity and every color and every age, and it was just so amazing for me to see. I want to preserve this piece of property for them. I want to make sure that they have a place to go and race and develop their skills, and maybe one day represent us in the wide world and show them what kind of talents we have. And so that's why we're here today. I also noticed that when we talk about Chamorro lands, it gets a little heated because there's not very many lands left, and there's so many of us who need land, and land is somehow, sometimes, tied to the way we prosper as a people, and I can understand the impact this may have on the Chamorro Land Trust and the beneficiaries, and so I also understand that. But when you look at the amount of laughter and cheer and happiness this piece of property brings to so many different ages, different walks of life, different color of skin, it just brings so much joy for me to see. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I would really, really like to protect this and save the raceway for all coming time. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Nicolas. I'd like to incorporate the timeline from the informational briefing into our public hearing record today. The bill was introduced on February 24, 2023, was subsequently referred on February 27, 2023. The 120-day deadline in our standing rules is June 27, 2023. Thus, despite recovery efforts, the hearing is today. For the record, invitations to provide feedback were sent to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, Department of Parks and Rec, State Historic Preservation Office, the Office of the Attorney General, Office of Public Accountability, Department of Public Works, Department of Land Management, the Guam Racing Federation, and of course the public. Committee will now receive testimony. We'll receive testimony from Chamorro Land Trust Commission. So please, if you could introduce yourselves.
Madam Speaker, would our commissioners like to go first, or would you? Okay. All right. I'll go first. My statement is going to cause a lot of ire, but I'm going to make it because my job is to protect our beneficiaries of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. Hafa-day Senators, Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to be here to provide testimony on Bill 56-37. For the record, my name is Alice Tyhern. I am the Administrative Director for the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. Also for the record, I am submitting a copy of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission Resolution number 2023-02, which was passed via motion by the CLTC Board of Commissioners at their regular board meeting of April 20th, 2023. The resolution opposes Bill 56-37, an act to classify Lot 7161R1, Municipality of YIGO, Guam, as a community recreation facility and to transfer authority of the lot from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to the Guam Department of Parks and Recreation. As the commissioners have stated time and again, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission does not oppose racing activity. The eviction that was issued to the Guam Racing Federation was brought upon because of violations they committed, because of a breach of their contract with the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, because they conducted other activities not associated with the racetrack, because they were not good stewards of our land. The Chamorro Land Trust Commission supports racing activities. That is different from giving away or giving over 200 acres of prime property to a special interest group at the cost of Chamorro Land Trust beneficiaries. And that is what this bill does. The Chamorro Land Trust Commission evicted a former tenant who time and again did not act in good faith with the CLTC. The CLTC evicted a tenant who, for their gain, raped, destroyed, permanently damaged pristine limestone forests, which we may never see again. The Guam Racing Federation had over 20 years to build the raceway. Instead, they did little to nothing to enhance the property for racetrack activities. Instead, they mined, they quarried, they sold what they extracted for profit, not CLTC profit. Taking lot 7161-R1 away from the Chamorro Land Trust beneficiaries is another injustice committed against our people. It will be another injustice committed against our people. And sadly, should this body choose to pass this bill, it will be an injustice committed by our own representatives against our own people for special interest gain. I urge this body not to pass this bill. As legislators, the action you take today will impact our tomorrow. Our tomorrow are our children. Our children will never know the beauty of a limestone forest or the importance of its ecological impact on our lives. To take this land away from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission will be to take the opportunity of having a safe home and environment away from our children of our CLTC beneficiaries. Again, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission is not opposed to racing activities. We evicted a tenant who was operating contrary to law and our agreement. The commissioners continue to discuss the use of this property and how best to proceed. The Chamorro Land Trust Commission opposes Bill 56-37 in its entirety. Good senators, I ask you to stand with us and protect the rights of our beneficiaries. Vote to protect our next generation from homelessness and poverty. Help us raise them. Vote for the next generation, not the next election. Vote no on Bill 56-37. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, we've received testimony, which is a resolution. Would anyone be reading this? All right, so next, Commissioner Herrera and Commissioner.
Sinata na kati kulu antis dita tuturun. Buenos días, si in anu si David Babauta Herrera, tau hagadzu za mafatuzu gimenan mizu Madam Speaker para be menta por este i Bill 5637. O aguardeci si Senator Dwayne ni proponis na bill para o adzuday famaguun paguzan para manmamayla na tempo, no, Senador? Pes no, ifinatoko gini pagu na haani, tiput para bay kontra i mga rerera. Guahu unu zau kumarera. Masya karera ang Carabao, pat karera ang Careta, pat prata karera, masya manu. Esti ina YIGO i kumarera esta tatungwa na esti lot 7161-1, no, un milyon na square meters di 252 na hektarya. Tatungwa na anay matutunes ti tatigi 98, no, na si gaya gwini Senador si Senator Casper Bauer ma-introduce pero tutunes ti na karera amin na YIGO gwini po manasetbi itano ni pero maatsas ti sagang karera. Lo ane sigis ti lo kuyu imbestiga, no, utungo na humalum i Paris Brothers fine na zaman gagagaw land trust ni pero waddo ki kaskahu ges tinatano. Bay finu English zanggin munazan zo zanggin hazit ti kumumperli finu CHAMORRO. Lo bay finu CHAMORRO sa CHAMORRO it zagumat CHAMORRO na manggaygi. Tazagwa, no, Senador? Fesno anay ti ma-accepta i pero guado ki kaskahu i Paris Brothers, no, fes humalum i esti na YIGO i po fan no matsogi sa gang karera. Zangun an ginun ata ni Bill 2218. 620 acres ma-reserve para i Speedway, gaygi gilot 289, Santa Rita. No, ata ni gaya unayam zu kopya, gaya i 620 hektarya na tano. Lo, ane gaygi i raceway, no, or i track i Cross Island, 2218, Madam Speaker. Yeah. Fes no, gaya gano speedway lenga 620 acres. Fes no, tanaklara na tiuko kontra mga rerera. No, taza, no, gikurason no ni pabay kontra makinista i famaguon pat hazi na man eega. Ezyo ko kontra gwini i pumatsuli 252 hektaryas gi tanu i land trust. Utunga si Senador Dwayne na faisin ko, hazi gay tanu sti, no? Zamala zata na klaru. Esti na tanu staba submerged land. Ungan? Klaru, no? Submerged land. I CHAMORRO land trust, guaha turidot niya lukwi i submerged land, gi rizan, no, Guam, fera di i submerged land is un firirat. Ungan, klaru, no? Fes no, put esta klaru na mamenta ko hazi gay tanu sti, no? No, tatuma na ginin unregistered estinatano i lot 7161-1. Pes estinatano, guau trupidasunya gi otro bandansalan gi route 15, which is 7161-2. So, lo maila zata birait magi gwini zata menta hafa na manggaygit gwini. Pes i posisyon nu gestina kondisyon po no, sufan estinatano, huzungi land trust pero manai Parks and Recs u kokontrasti tiput respeto no sasangan sti tiput no minalait pat binibu lo u protektehi lo kui i manainata antis zanginin ata neno i dokumenti niyo na yamzu no gagi ene no ezimagang 1940 tax roll anin ata ni 1940 tax roll anong todo hagata no zan sumay zan Santa Rita, zan no Uroti. Pes eno imang gaygi gweno nakilizonu man matsuli tanu niya. Klaru, no? Ginin US Naval Government. Ano matsuli tanu? Klaru zan agang na matsuli tanu gi no pidisitu na no baluwa gi na bray. Pes no ane matutu ni 1950 gi organic ag, no? Klaru na matutun i arendu, no? Gaya gweno talo gi Bill 33 ang Tilachu gi First Congress, i Public Law 12-226. Pesa ni monazan ni arendu, no? Humalo mi CHAMORRO land trust gi ninaspo bodazo. Anay duru si Pobu dozo no duru mo na isya na guma na duru man mapatintiaw itanu. Anin atan zon imbestiga I original na tonu hazi siya man mang nyuli tonu ni no megay gaya gilep blue. Lo mala zata sigya mo na. An matwal gi no I arendu na banda no ma fanyagu I land for the landless, no? I land for the landless tatunga na klaro. Zangkin gwaha tano mo, pat gwa tano niya sinanamu, tatamu, tiyu mo, pat hazi na gwelu, pat gwela, ti landlisaw. Lo zangkin moto magi gini ni stronyo na tau-tau, no? Kwalifikaw para I landless. Hunggan, an ti siguram zo ata na ilay sa magart. Pes gino 25 na sokan, sina 20 in siyenti ni ane hamigi nasyon, duro yung protesta I gobyerno ni pero ma-implementa I CHAMORRO Land Trust. Klaro, no? Pes no utunga si Dus Masi, Madam Speaker, na pro bono gibidamu na zudam za no inkentra I no gobernamento gina bray za manyagam gimenan adulup kana 3 meses gialum utsan dan halum fatsi. Lo iput rason na yun so gizo na protesta I pero ma-implementa I 12-226. Mas mana that fast forward no gin-95 ma sangan okay no areglay komisyon ma fot may komisyon dispes na duri tanu matso gizi first come first serve. Gagi gi papit bueno na ano ka todo gi 95 gi December gi segundo hazi fine na manfila gi tan pofan manyuli tanu. Logwi na tempo no clause an agang na I man aplika bulag gini man aplika man taitanu taigwi na andinya gi tax row fes no gwaha 2 kilizonu sumu I CHAMORRO Land Trust antilachu civil case 17-00113 gi district court fes man akuti no gi koti ani monaza ni koti sangan US District Court na okay esta claro the race base is the CHAMORRO Land Trust no pes put the race base no hano tati government of Guam and CHAMORRO Land Trust na claro le blue zo claro na the race base za ezu na tauto I sinaman man probetsu gwina tanu di put sino gaigi ginin esti na lista I mangaizu tax row ni gaigi hagat sumay dedidu zigu todo hulus tao urunaw wahat sempre gini komentus ni tauto urunaw ni atungo loki problema niya gisangkatan hami gisan litsan hagat zigu dedidu matak talafofu ezu kala nutungo na halum tanu esti sangkatan tu comprendi lo benak clara na no ileknya I US na ti race base 12-226 First, no, in Hamza, gini sumogi I Public Law 35-112, ane matsogi ni pero ma reclaims o po mazuda ezi man malingutan niya. Now, kwanto na tauto man aplika para CHAMORRO Land Trust, esta pago 28 sina 15 za distipagwa na ora, sina taatan na ko man no kabali sa na tanu, unggang gwa madibidi tanu sa zangin tahasu na ano matsogwi land for the landless kana 10,000 na sulat 10,000 lots man subdivide per land for the landless kada sulat 2005 no pes no ta kontra zu ma repeal I land for the landless za ma transferi tanu gini ni land for the landless is tagwato gi CHAMORRO Land Trust na utunga na ni mafaisi ni question gwini na no piso ko hadzi gai tanui lot 7161 no za ungan sina no tasoda no lo submerged land is staba the unregistered no unsurveyed na tanu lo we na bray na mas survey za ma register sa pudi interes ni kaskahu ikaskahu niya mangaigi gigi sanhaza na banda distifadian sinidot gi guahabil ta un baba no ni pero mabendi ikaskahun fadian no fes no utunga na ezuti me entalu gesti na problema lo no gaigi pagu na no manyalang I tauto I kaskahu sa no manu niga para be faman no pensan zan hammer mill masanganyo na zangin malago un dump truck load istay December na sinabay na yaw. December pa be faman kaskahu ni pen mill put rason na tinahong kaskahu fes no ezu no sasangan ezu sa put estina hemplui para ta transferis tina tanu nai no para offer you ma transferi sinya I land trust no in muneas ti sinya I pofangarera ma continua pofangarera e no tin ke kentra lo I hemplu ni tai manus tin mana masufan za mapatintiaw distitutun gin 28 latsi zo na kontrata e kwa tai manu na matsogi zo na public hearing sa nyo tatay no report gezo na bill setya na tauto man holum las maybe gi egan gi lunis mangai gi todi otru kilizono man matsotso fes no anyo atenezu I committee report leko okay stuff is maybe na tauto mangai gi gini holum mulia hozi gini mangai gini man testigo gui lo mungi tau-tautan ni interes ni man malingutan niya no manay gui lo no edza pabesangan na no uagradesi si Senador Dwayne ni bidanya na ani famalo Senador ni pero mana continuay karera lo ipomatransferi tanu 252,000 1,000,000 square meter ni nunca sinya I land trust edza regla lo tisina loki na no untungo quanto I 14,000 gi 252 no hectarea no 14 pesos gi acre $14 an acre for a property that's appraised at $8.4 million and you're leasing it at $14 an acre. It's a no-brainer to conclude that we are being shortchanged. When I say we, I CHAMORRO Land Trust. Lo ezi bill yung lagnus na sinudot malik ni fadian na zangin poro masufa ni tanu todo I ganon siya gui para I land trust. Malik na lingwahi. Lo, ane pa bay fan ni koru base no, pagu 45 I cubic yard. Para tabendi I kaskahu gi 3 pesos, fes matu za bay fan gi 45, eston tunga na kana 40 pesos na ganon siya. Si Senador gini business lo bulan na ganansya lo mungi ganansya para I land trust. Peseza Madam Speaker dispensaw no para besangan. Zangin gua question mizu sinabe opi gi finu English o zangin malago be finu English ni afo presenta gi yes na papit niyo nayamzu no gayu para be opi zangin gua question. Sizus masi.
Sizus Masi, Commissioner. Commissioner, you may proceed.
My name is Earl Garrido. I'm one of the commissioners for CLTC. As a matter of fact, I'm the newest commissioner. About this time last year, I was confirmed by the legislature. First of all, I want to say, wow, thank you, David. That was really outstanding. I've prepared a testimony that I would like to read, okay? As the newest commissioner of the CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission, I take my responsibility very seriously. I feel my role is to serve the people and the island's welfare as mandated by the CLTC's charter and mission statement. Reviewing all the previous reports on the Guam Raceway Federation over the past 25 years was a feat quite daunting, composing of at least 800 pages of continuing substandard conduct cited by EPA, Public Works, Department of Ag, Parks and Rec, the Ancestral Division of Parks and Rec, the Land Use Commission, and the Public Auditor. In supposition, I asked, why wasn't there a feasibility study and a business plan presented initially? A business plan would normally have a feasibility study to qualify the venture. It would also disclose the revenue sources for the development, viability as a revenue resource and its practicality for financial returns on investment. It would also have accompanying the master plan, timelines regulating the development towards achieving its completion. Nothing like that was ever submitted. Before moving on, let us differentiate what a feasibility study is and business plans. The elements are, the four main elements of a feasibility study are technical feasibility, financial feasibility, market feasibility, and operational feasibility. All combined should detail analysis of what is needed to complete the proposed development. The report should include the development, the market breakdown, technology that's needed, as well as the sources of financing and capital. The market feasibility, aka market research study, is the most important element because it examines the marketability of the potential development. Business plans usually support the following essential: an executive summary, company description, products and services, market analysis, marketing strategy, financials, and budget. To my dismay, there wasn't any. Why is it important? Because it identifies the resources available for the success of the venture. With all that set aside, the Guam Raceway Federation's lease expired in 2019 and had been on a month-to-month lease. After the Raceway ignored the recommended modifications of their draft lease proposal, an official letter of termination was initially issued in January of this year, with a 90-day extension granted in February to accommodate the pre-scheduled smoking wheels. Officially, this asset is now under the purview of CLTC. The Guam Raceway Federation's refusal to vacate the property on the June 2nd, as per the duly served eviction notice, now categorizes the Guam Raceway Federation as trespassing. The asset consists of 250 acres or 1 million square meters. CLTC doesn't intend for the asset to remain dormant. CLT envisions rezoning the assets to get the best use of the land and parceling the assets to oblige the existing facilities' footprint and provide multiple single-unit residents aligned with the CLTC's mission statement and bylaws. The existing facility will provide monetary enhancements into CLTC's coffer. This, in turn, will pilot the CLTC in attaining substantiability in support of our mandate. We have available to CLTC leases home financing through Guam Housing Corporation. With enhanced financing, we will be in a better position to survey residential and agricultural properties. Currently, we are working alongside GWA in the Ukado area, putting sewer and water infrastructure into CLT properties and the adjoining landowners. The CLTC's wheels are in motion. We want to move forward aggressively, correct the mistakes of the past, and forge forward with our mission statement, providing residential as well as agricultural land to the people of Guam, thus improving the significance of their livelihood. My position on the bill to transfer the raceway to the Department of Parks and Rec isn't beneficial to CLTC, and more importantly, the good people of Guam. I stand in opposition and urge this legislative body to vote down this bill. Its merits are weak, insignificant, controversial. Department of Parks and Rec has about 600 acres of land available that was designated more than 2 decades ago for the activities of the Guam Raceway. Before concluding my testimony, I want to acknowledge for the record that the CLTC staff, despite the CLTC's jaded past, are highly motivated, hardworking individuals. I am proud to work with and represent the CLTC staff. Viva Tauta Guam, viva employado CLTC, sana maasid and bendiciam todos para iminaulig Guam, Zero.
Jesús Masi, Commissioner Garrido, and Commissioner Herrera, and Director Tyron. All right, on that, can I just ask you, is this property, it's authorized by law to be leased for commercial purposes. Is it included in your 9% cap on lease of commercial properties?
No.
It's not. So in addition to the 9% of properties you're able to lease for commercial purposes, this is on top of that?
This would be yes.
All right, and then, is there any appraisal that you're aware of for this property?
We haven't conducted.
All right, thank you. Senator Brown, Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the board members and Director Tyron of the Land Trust in coming and providing your testimony with regards to this bill. You know, I, who have been critical of the Land Trust, it's not too many directors ago that I was very critical of the actions of one of your previous directors with regards to management of the Land Trust. You know, I've always wanted to see the Land Trust actually execute its mission and do it properly. And if there's abuse of Land Trust resources, I had an expectation that the Land Trust would deal with that appropriately. Because there are many Chamorros out there that will never, ever have the opportunity to have land under Chamorro Land Trust, either for residential home or farming, if that is their interest to do farming activities. So I would have an expectation that those that do receive the land properly manage it, because they have something that many others that are entitled will never receive. In this particularly the history also, and we did start looking into the commercial leases of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission when I was up at UOG. One of the old controversies was the golf course up in Dedido, and the fact that the golf course for many years did not properly pay its lease agreements. And that's another frustration, because the Land Trust was not as aggressive as it needed to be. I mean, if we have a business deal, I'm providing the property, then, you know, I have an expectation you make lease payments. But, you know, people have a tendency to view that if they're working with the government, we'll work our way around it. So I do commend the Land Trust for taking action. My concern with this bill, and I have no argument with the sponsor about wanting happiness. I want happiness all the time. But my concern is I do not want to cloud the issue if there's been mismanagement or abuse of Land Trust resources that, again, are entrusted to our people. These are public assets. They just happen to be under the care of the Chamorro Land Trust. That we don't try to sidestep that issue and ignore it and think that the solution is to take this Land Trust property, which I have reservations about taking Land Trust property, and transferring it to another department in the government of Guam that has its own challenges, because we want to sidestep the issue. If there has been abuse, and I don't know, I will want to see the audit report from the public auditor and determine whether or not there has been abuse. I'm very concerned about conservation property if it's been adversely impacted, because then again, those are resources that were intended, not by my legislature, but previous legislatures before us, to protect those properties for that very purpose. So I don't want to sidestep. I have no opposition to racing. As I said, I was there with Senator Larry Kasperbauer back in 1990, forgotten, that allowed this process to move forward for the racetrack, even though I have reservations for the legislature to dictate how the land should be used. But the interest at the time was wanting to allow a place for safe, enjoyable opportunity for this recreational support. And I have no argument against that. But if there has been abuse, I think that issue needs to be clarified. I think there's a cloud over this issue right now, and I think until we get some answers, I'm very reserved about supporting this bill. And I don't think the solution is to transfer it to Department of Parks and Recreation. So I support your position, but I also expect the Land Trust to effectively do your job. I don't know what you're waiting for. If you hesitate to act, then this is what you get. This issue gets dragged out, and it gets it's highly politicized. Because if you don't vote for this bill, you don't support racing. That's what the agenda is. At the other end, it would have been unimaginable when we created the, not by myself, but the previous sponsors of legislation many years prior, with Senator Badalia and wanting to move forward this whole issue of creating the land trust, that a future legislature would want to extract this large amount of property and take it out of the land trust inventory. It defeats the purpose of why the land trust was created if we continue to parcel out and take out, whenever it's politically convenient, land trust land. So I have those reservations. I don't have any further questions. I think you've relayed your sentiment. But what if this land does get taken out? What action or what position would that put the land trust, if I can ask you? If the legislature were to pass this bill and the governor were to sign it, what position does this put the land trust in?
Did you want to?
Thank you for the question. I believe your question was that if they remove the 1 million square meter, and if it became law, then we have to subtract 1 million square meter from our 30,000 acres of property.
And would that be okay with you?
Of course not, because what created the Chamorro Land Trust because of the unfair condemnation that was done back in the 40s, the 50s, and 60s. So I understand that there's a lot of semantics or spin that, well, nobody owns the property at that time. It was not registered to Tunusay or Tan Maria. But remember that Public Law 2218 was very specific when Senator Ed Regis informed all of the government agencies, and I believe you were already in some of the divisions there at that time, that they wanted to ensure that all the government agencies were supposed to project their expansion for the next 20, 25, 50, 75, 100 year, and choose property to develop. But the clause on that Public Law 2218 was that that particular division or department was supposed to set up the plan, get the fundings, and start developing it within that time frame. And if it's not developed within that window, then it reverts back to the Chamorro Land Trust. So of course, respectfully, personally, I won't be satisfied with that, but if the majority of the 15 so decides, and if the executive branch or the governor accepts, then we'll go for another round.
Well, I think it definitely devalues the agenda of the Chamorro Land Trust if the legislature continues to extract property from your mission and what you're intending to do. But with that, I thank you again for providing your testimony to the legislature, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Brown. For the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, Senator Dwayne, any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, just a brief comment and maybe one or two questions. So thank you for your testimony, first of all. So in the testimony, I'm kind of hearing a couple different things. And so, Director Tyrone, as you mentioned, you spoke passionately about the limestone forest and its value. So, I mean, it's leading me to think then that you would not have any commercial or viable use for the property, that you would, it almost sounds like you would put it in preservation mode. So I'm a little conflicted on your testimony with regard to that, but maybe I'll form that as a matter of a question in a moment. Then with the other commissioners, thank you very much. So it sounds like you're discussing properties for residential, property to be used for those purposes. So there is, without a formal adopted, I don't see anything formally adopted, but there was questions earlier about what are the intentions outside of what's proposed and the eviction notice and what any viable opportunities going forward. It sounds like there's already discussion and commissioners have a position on what to do with the property. So I think we'll have to just continue to listen to the balance of the perspective here where the others come before us. But I want to get you on the record, Director Tyrone, on that. Was your discussion on the preservation of limestone forest to mean that the property should be allowed to maybe heal itself and just go back to it or to exist without any other activity on the property?
No.
Okay. So to build homes or to build and to use it for any other purpose, there would have to be site preparation on the property. Would that be logical?
Yes, there would have to be site preparation, yes.
Okay. So I guess to the commissioners, maybe just to get it real quickly on the record, because there's been a discussion that there may be a possibility of cohabitation going forward. I think the thing that's coming up with this bill is the transfer takes it out of your hands, as has been discussed here earlier. Within the inventory, maintaining and maybe negotiating, coming back to the drawing board and working with the raceway, is there a possibility of both of your visions being worked out? Cltc.
Now, when we were mentioning about the environmental damage, if we may recall the video that artery that connected the land or the lot 7161-1 and the back road artery that connected up to the quarry. If you guys may recall that slither of property, that was the write-up that was done by the Department of Agriculture for the environmental damage. And that's lot 7164-1, -2, -3, 4, and 5. That equates to about maybe 3 million square meters. And the elevation of that property, based on the elevation that you guys see from the drag strip, where the drag strip is, and down, that was cut down to the bottom, is 520 feet from sea level. So, of course, the plan was to configure the Grand Prix within the 520 feet elevation. So, the drag strip that you see there, it's about maybe 45, 50 feet up high, and of course, we already understand what the plan is that to remove the drag strip, extract the coral, convert it to cash, and start building the drag strip at the level of 520 feet. Now, we were mentioning about the damage on the environmental, which is the artery going back to lot 7164-1, 2, 3, 4, rights of way. So that's the issue that was not addressed yet. I've done some research on that. And like you said, Senators, that to get the fadang to grow back there, it's going to take you, an iffit tree that's been removed, because that was a bull cart trail at one time. It's a 10-foot trail, but it is about 40 to 50 feet wide now. So, of course, what do you want to do with that property, right, to make it productive? Sure, there's plans for that property, because the configuration of that 1 million square meter with the drag strip there and lot 7164-1, 2, 3, 4 and the rights of way can be carved out in a condition to prepare it for a subdivision, planned use development subdivision with shopping mall, gas stations. It's a whole community in itself if it was carved and configured accordingly. Now, I just mentioned earlier that I was ordering a hammer mill and Pennsylvania sand, and I was told that you can place your order today and pick it up on December. And I said, what seems to be the problem? Why can't I need the sand now for the project I'm working on? And of course, that equates back to the supply of the limestone. Is there a short supply of the limestone? Right, that's the question. So, of course, that's what makes the price go up. And if we're selling it at $3 a cubic yard and buying it at $45 a cubic yard, that's a big amount of profit. So where does the land trust profit? That's my question for the benefit of the constituents and beneficiaries.
Yeah, I guess I'll close with this. And Alice, just in the short period of time that you've been there, My concern is that we have this reoccurring issue and this discussion about, and the audit will bear out what has been the extraction, what was the topo pre, post, and currently, because there also is topography issues other than just land being cleared. I mean, if you go down, I've hiked Pocket and some of the other areas. I mean, the land naturally has a drop-off elevation as well, not necessarily just from complete extraction, but that will bear out in the audit. But what bothers me is that it seems like and I'm not blaming you for this, but it seems like there's never been a use of this resource of finances coming in to have compliance. I mean, there's this ongoing and many years of the accusation that there has been this misuse, and the audit will bear it out to the best of the ability, but are you aware of any use of the resources and the like to enforce, monitor, and ensure compliance prior to the eviction notice?
I'm sorry, Senator, am I aware of what? If there were other...
Of any use of the resources that have been paid from the raceway track, remittances, because they're going to put on the record what they've remitted to the government of Guam in terms of how they extrapolated their share. Any record of use of those resources to ensure that the Chamorro Land Trust is pushing compliance with the agreements?
I do not have specific information. We have received some resources. Our team is putting all that together with regard to what it may have been used for, et cetera, right? With regard to enforcement coming on board, it's one of our biggest challenges. I'm working with our staff of 9. I look forward to the auditor's report because they will identify issues with Chamorro Land Trust, and I am going to work on addressing those issues with Chamorro Land Trust. In the short time that I have been there, I have come across many issues with Chamorro Land Trust, and I'm constantly working to address those issues, but I'm hoping I'm doing it the right way in that I am seeking our legal counsel to ensure that we are doing this the best legal course of action to protect everybody involved. There are a host of issues. Enforcement is one of them. I cannot speak to what occurred in the past. I can only speak to what it is that I'm trying to do and hoping to do moving forward, which is to work on the enforcement and ensure that things happen.
I agree. This is going to be for a different time, but I understand that even now the golf course is grossly in arrears. Grossly in arrears. And if we apply this, lots of the properties are very much grossly out of compliance. So if we're applying the standard, because what's the reasoning a lot of times is because these were the purposes, now the entity, and we say special interest, is a golf course a special interest? You know, is other means that we've used for those purposes of commercial, are they special interest? And are they a deal to commercial value? All these will be discussed. But what happens with this bill is going to happen with this bill. But the thing is that if there is a window that we're still sitting down and discussing the option to work within the lease components, I just want to see if that's there, because that would be an answer outside of the bill, but we'll proceed as it is. You've mentioned it, Alice. I don't know whether that's a concurrence from the board, or you've just mentioned it that you're not opposed to possibly joint use, and I think that has to be considered in the context of this bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Director, would you please read your resolution onto the record for those who are listening and are not able to read it? Commissioner Garrido, you had a response?
Yes, I would like to make a comment for Senator Dwayne's question. Yes, the golf course is in very severe arrears, and a lot of that was due to COVID. It's a community golf course, and more than half of their clients were tourists, but everything got shut down because of COVID. They did make a good faith effort, and they came in our last board meeting to try and make arrangements to move forward and give them the opportunity to catch up. They had an arrangement with the prior administration, CLTC administration, meaning the board and the director, to work out a payment schedule. And they were to keep the monthly payments. I think they're paying like 20-some thousand a month, okay? And at the same time, they would be paying towards their arrears. And that was supposed to just kick in a few months ago, maybe, or a year ago. No, I think just the beginning of this year it was supposed to kick in an agreement. But they made a good faith effort to come in and try and clear the air and try and set the record straight.
Thank you, sir. Director? And then we'll hear from Senator Quinata. Just as CLTC, we still have a lot of people signed up to testify. We'd just like to
Chamorro Land Trust Commission Resolution Number 2023-02, opposing Bill 56-37, an act to classify Lot 7161-R1, YIGO, Guam as a community recreation facility, and to transfer authority of the lot from Chamorro Land Trust Commission to the Guam Department of Parks and Recreation. Whereas Lot number 7161-R1, Municipality of YIGO, has assumed the status of Chamorro Land Trust property and shall be under the control of the Commission pursuant to subsection 75A 104 and 75A 105 of Chapter 75A, subsection 75 104 and subsection 75 105 of Chapter 75, Title 21, Guam Code Annotated. And whereas, as expressed in 21 GCA, subsection 75A 100A, it is the intent of E Legislator in Guam to defend the history and purpose of the Chamorro Land Trust Act, created in 1975 by Public Law 12-226 and enacted as Chapter 75 of Title 21, Guam Code Annotated. The Chamorro Land Trust Act established a land restoration program meant to rectify the unjust taking of Chamorro homelands by the United States federal government between 1898 and 1968, and provide residential and agricultural land for those persons eligible in the form of Chamorro Land Trust Commission leases. And whereas the Guam Racing Federation occupied lot number 7161-R1 under an agreement entered into for a period of 20 years, beginning on June 1, 1998 and ending May 31, 2018. And whereas Public Law 30-204 required the Guam Racing Federation to cause all organizers, sponsors, or managers of any event held at the raceway park for which a fee is charged for the admission to pay to the government of Guam an admissions assessment of 10% of the admission price paid per admission, and required the Guam Racing Federation to file a quarterly report with the Chamorro Land Trust Commission and the Speaker of the Guam Legislature, listing each event, event organizers, sponsors, or managers, the admission charged, and the admissions tax paid for each event. And whereas the Guam Racing Federation has not complied with the requirements of Public Law 30-204, and whereas Public Law 34-142 was passed in December 2018 that authorized the lease of Lot 7161-R1 for a period of 50 years and allowed the Guam Racing Federation a right of first refusal. And whereas the committee report attached to Bill 342-34, which was enacted as Public Law 34-142, made no mention of mining or excavating activity on the property. And whereas despite diligent efforts to enter an agreement with the Guam Racing Federation as authorized by Public Law 34-142, no agreement was reached. And whereas the Guam Racing Federation was allowed to continue to occupy Lot 7161-R1 while pursuing a new agreement. And whereas the Department of Agriculture issued a notice of violation to Henry Simpson and the Guam Racing Federation for the unauthorized clearing of government-owned lands, lot 7161-R, 7163, and 7164, which severely impacted the native limestone forests growing in these lots. And whereas the Guam Racing Federation and its contractors did not comply with backfilling permitting requirements and utilized imported materials for backfilling. And whereas the Guam Racing Federation and its contractors extracted mineral beyond the area allowed for clearing and grading identified as Zone 1, Phase 5A, and whereas mining and excavating activity on the property is not consistent with operating a raceway park, and whereas the CLTC has not issued any request for proposals for mining or excavating activity on lot 7161-R1, and whereas reducing the amount of property in the CLTC inventory would not benefit the trust, and whereas the CLTC Board of Commissioners at their April 2023 regularly scheduled board meeting passed a motion opposing Bill 56-37, an act to classify lot number 7161-R1, Municipality of YIGO, Guam, as a community recreation facility and to transfer authority of the lot from Chamorro Land Trust Commission to the Guam Department of Parks and Recreation. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission Board of Commissioners opposes Bill 56-37, duly signed by our Chairman, John F. Regis, Commissioners David Herrera, Commissioner Earl J. Garrido, and Commissioner Arlene P. Berdalio in May 18, 2023.
Masi. Senator Quinata.
Good afternoon, panel. Masi Mizo. I know certainly there are myriad of issues that CLTC continues to face. I thank you for taking up the helm, Ms. Alice Tyron and the board. There are also numerous properties behind on payroll. Obviously, the golf course is one of your tenants as well. We know that very well. Payless, the buffer strip in Dedido is also another account that has not been accounted for that should be audited as well. I'm sure we certainly can collect a lot of revenue. There are a lot of properties that certainly can be used to amplify and augment the shortages of the Chamorro Land Trust. I know that we all want to see the Chamorro Land Trust be a successful program. The intent of the late Paul Berdalio and the numerous champions, those individuals of the National and Chamorro, all want to see that the program be successful for the people that it's intended for. So, you know, I see that the racetrack has used this property for generations. And that's the premise for me is I'm not a racer. Obviously, my body's not going to be going good on a track if I'm on a bike, right? So I'm very bothered that we're going to take land and that's been used for recreational purposes and really evict them, and where are we going to put them? I mean, I also want to proffer legislation to, you know, find more money for you guys, because that's the only way to really fix the issues that you guys face. There's no infrastructure. There's a lot more properties out there that are more of an issue. We have agricultural lots that are planting junk cars. We have residential properties that have more broken fridge and more broken appliances, and I digress, right? But this is a huge situation. So that's why I'm bringing these up. And for me, I'm 26 years old. So if you look at it, it's basically like a 26-year-old problem. So what really are we doing to fix all of those issues? How can we better fix and address those issues without evicting the racetrack? I understand that it seems like it's a political issue, but we also have those tenants that are also, that can be a political issue. If we took all the Payless employees and we put them in here, it would be the same issue. If I took all the golf course owners in here and I put them in here, it would be kind of the same issue. We also have the baby Dan of Dedido that's adjacent to the golf course, right? What's that, Pyramid Recycling? Are they on Chamorro Land Trust property? Yes? And are they also behind? Yeah, the recycling center to the right? Is that also a Chamorro Land Trust property?
Yes.
Are they behind on rent?
So that is another issue, Senator.
Yeah. So
that I am currently trying to address.
I know. There are myriad of issues, and I only stress this because I ran on the premise of land. I know the speaker and I have our differences on land. So, if I was Black Construction and I had the opportunity to write you a check for $5 million to help stir the issue and get rid of these problems, I would. Or Blue Water Group. Because it seems like it's a financial crisis, and we really need to help you guys get more money so that we can get our people some real help. Because a lot of people out there still have no water and still no power, but it's not because of Mawar. So this is a 26-year-old problem, and all of those tenants should be evicted. If we're going to evict the racetrack, evict all the other tenants. Close down Payless parking lot, make them park on the roof. At this point, I've never raced in the racetrack. Conflict of interest, Joey Crisostomo is my mom's cousin, and the wife is my dad's cousin as well. So I'm a Crisostomo and a Quinata, just for avoidance of conflict of interest. I have no interest at the racetrack though. But that's where I'm at, is we're gonna take this property and put it back. If this bill fails, it fails. But my point is, we're gonna take this land that's being used by the community for recreational purposes at this time, when we all know it's being used. There's other lots out there. There's hectares of land out there, numerous limestone properties. So if we don't want to develop it, then we should convert the whole Chamorro Land Trust into a conservation operation. And then start condemning properties that are not being used properly. Because there's an environmental crisis on Chamorro Land Trust properties. And I understand. There's only X amount of board members, only X amount of management. There's only, how many, 9 employees? 9? So I think we really need to put 90 more employees there and shore up your response, because, man, it's really a mess. And again, it's not all your fault, not your board members' fault. I think it's just a generational issue. And I'm very much hopeful that we can work on some kind of collaborative effort. Don't get me wrong. I really want to see Chamorro Land Trust be a successful program. And I'm supporting my colleague, Dwayne Nicolas, because although Department of Parks and Rec has its own issues too, but I'm sure if you put the racetrack, you put a gas tank there, and we would probably make millions in one day if the racetrack had a gas station there, just on Typhoon Mawar, because the lines were ridiculous. But again, I digress a little bit. I just really want to see the program really successful. I really want to make sure that the kids here, the generations of racers, are given a place to be recreational. I don't want to have illegal racing on the roads. We have enough illegal activity out there. I mean, we got to figure out something. So, that's why I'm supporting this legislation, and I'm not trying to make this an oversight hearing, but I'm trying to find some balance in this situation, because it's really crazy. If I introduce legislation to transfer the whole Dedio buffer lot to Dedio Mayor's office to build a new mayor's office, am I gonna, get blowback for that? Because it's the same situation to an extent. So I hear it, and that's pretty much where I'm at. I really want to see the program either way go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Nicolas, for the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, any questions or comments?
Can I just clarify something real quick?
Yes. Director?
Yes. Senator Quinata, respectfully, I just want to clarify, we are not evicting the racetrack. We are evicting Guam Racing Federation. And there isn't anything that states that there can't be any other company who could come in and run the racetrack. I want to clarify that.
Thank
we
you.
are not stopping, we're not opposing the activities, right?
Thank you. Senator Nicolas, for the Chamorro Land Trust.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker. Ma'am, hypothetically, if you were to evict the raceway, right, the Raceway Federation, couldn't you go and immediately into negotiations with other entities to develop this property for any other reason? Maybe perhaps grading and extraction? Couldn't you do that? Or are we holding this property strictly for raceway activities?
We could issue an RFP. However, the Chamorro Land Trust hasn't done that because we are in discussions with our legal counsel to get the best guidance possible for our commissioners to make that decision. They have been discussing, in short, how to move forward. And we want to make sure that we're moving forward in the right way.
Right. So an eviction notice has been given. An eviction notice has been given to vacate the property, right?
Yes.
So basically, anything can happen in earnest. You can have a meeting tomorrow or whatever to discuss possibilities of developing this track for other than raceway. Couldn't you do that?
Yes.
Yes, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what this bill does is it's trying to designate this property as a recreational facility and transferring it in the care of Parks and Recreation solely for raceway activities. And it's not in any way trying to lock in the Guam Raceway Federation at all. Is that, I'm kind of like making that clear, right? Is that kind of way you understand it?
Sure. If you have it transferred to Parks and Rec?
Right.
It
This
does-
in no way is negotiating a lease with the current landowner, right? That's not what this does, right?
Well, the current landowner is the Chamorro Land Trust
Or, I mean,
Commission.
the current leasee or licensee.
Yeah, we don't have a lessee. They were evicted.
Oh, okay, so they were evicted, right? So hypothetically, again, what you can do is like tomorrow, if you wanted to, you can try to work to enter in negotiations with another entity, another business person or any other federation, and it doesn't have to be for the purpose of raceway.
Correct. We could, depending
okay.
upon how
So-
the
so-
commissioners decide.
Right, so because, I mean, it's just interesting because one of your commissioners, Uncle David, Timo disutetan to it, Uncle David who guaidzao, zasaina hao paraguao. Lo, I'm not going to let this happen where you're going to take, the raceway away from the children. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to do everything I can. Now, I'm going to put that aside. Uncle David who guaidzao, I'm not trying to be dissentu or anything. I just want to clarify, you mentioned that there's a shortage of pen sand because I need pen sand and there's a shortage, right? And the raceway happens to be sitting on a lot of materials, correct?
Unggan, malado na klaro, no? Na esta ka na 28 milyon na salapi tau tano mapega gi no lot 7161. Be finu English do makumprendi. From the beginning in 1998, no, there was a tax break and it amounted up to about, we can say about $6 million. And there was a sale of coral, which was estimated about 4 million. So,
Are you trying to say maybe that perhaps in the future that this may be a source to combat the shortage of pen sand? Is that where we might be going?
Question mo no ileleg mo na zangin no ilantros para sustain tanu ko para mabudosa I drag strip I drift zani motocross ahi claro ahi sa zangin para tabudosa na utsumi zone na tsutsu salapi tanu kalanti cilung no za kalanti no dinansi na klasin no ampara un tutat na utsumi zone un pega fispon fatu za pon budosa put para pensan hamon na no ko si Einstein o mathematician na puro tutade no computation na feasible no. And what you're saying, just to be clear for those that did not understand what we're saying, that na if I needed Pensan and the land trust was under control, would we inadvertently come in there and use a dozer, rake the drag, the drift, and the motocross and convert it to Pensan? No, and you can't, because you can't convert a blacktop with
No, but
you can.
You could together, right, conspire to come up with a lease and then lease it to some commercial entity and
continue the racetrack. Yeah, Mr.
So-
Goodman
so-
can come in and continue the drag drift and the motocross tomorrow if you meet the condition.
Thank you. That would be a great idea.
Gracias.
Uncle David. Thank you. I just want to also mention one more thing. If it's land we're trying to preserve, you look around on this map here, and it looks like most of the grading and the dredging or the removal of stone is happening on private property. And in the 25 years that the Chamorro Land Trust had lease and license to the raceway, it doesn't look like they really much touched the property. So if it's land preservation you're talking about, I think the preserving this property is best in the hands of the racers, because they didn't really take much from the property. If that was the accusation, right? Is that the accusation? You have anything to add to that, Uncle David?
Tana klora tadu. Zangirun atan yun na mapa niyo yung kakadga, no? Undi manu nagagi tasi, right? You see where the shoreline is. So from the shoreline, based on the environmental rock impact and the quality of material, the high quality materials from the cliff line into Route 15, the quality of material from the cliff line down to the beach is a low grade coral. It's soft coral. The coral where the the 7161 is and 7164 all the way down to Fadian is grade 1 coral. You basically have to blast the rock with dynamite to remove the rock. And that is why the fact is on this property, right, it was blasted 6 feet below the 520. That's where we tripped, that we over-excavated, or the operator over-excavated by 6 feet to get the quality rock and then backfill it with construction material. And that's what we found. I mean, I'm new. I'm only here for about 12 months from last year, so I'm new to this, but I could figure out the operation because I've done quarry before in Naval Mag. So I can read.
You can appreciate the magnitude of the...
I can read the movement of the machine.
Yeah. Ma'am, one more time, again, just for the record. If this bill doesn't go through, or hypothetically again, when they've been evicted, you can enter into negotiations again with a private entity to develop this property, and it has and it can maybe not ever include raceway activities. That's correct, right? That's you can come into a lease agreement with another entity for this property. If this bill doesn't pass, you can enter into a property for any other type of reason other than raceway.
Well, I believe the legislature would have to approve, and then I can't speak to the commissioners entering into that kind of agreement. We have stated from the beginning that they're not opposed to this. They're not opposed to raceway. We're not opposed to racing. We're not opposed to the drag strip or the activities that take place there. There's no opposition there. That being said, they're very mindful. I believe the commissioners are mindful with the decision that they need to make. I'm not going to say yes or no. The commissioners are mindful of that, and they've said it time and time again. They're not opposed to this racetrack.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Nicolas. Senator Barnett.
Thank you, Madam. Ms. Alice, so let's say since you don't have a current leaseholder at that property or a tenant, and again, I asked you this earlier, could a new group that was not the subject of all of this uncertainty, could a new group come in and apply to lease this land for the purpose of maintaining it as a raceway facility?
If an RFP goes out for that purpose, yes. The commissioners will need to make that decision.
Can you describe the process?
We would send out, the commissioners would decide how we're going to deal with the property. From there, if the commissioners say, okay, let's keep it, let's section it off, this part is going to be racetrack, then we would issue an RFP with the language asking people to submit their proposals, right, to operate a racetrack. It goes through the whole bid process.
I see. And so is that where we're at now, that you have to start the whole process over, and the commissioners have to make a determination about the best use of the property and whether or not the racetrack part would be kept as a racetrack?
Yeah, so where we are right now is, given everything that's being said in public from the former lessee, right? We are at a legal, we are seeking legal guidance. I know I've said that time and time again. So our legal counsel will provide us with guidance and provide our commissioners with the guidance with regard to how to proceed. If we've got everything cleared out, I mean, for all intents and purposes, they've been evicted. I'm hoping legal counsel will say, okay, let's move forward, and the commissioners decide, all right, survey it, keep that up, RFP out for whatever. Then we will move forward that way through the bid process.
I was a little confused because I saw in the media that Mr. Simpson had said that he supported this bill because he had said the Department of Parks and Rec were willing to work with us, and that the Chamorro Land Trust Commission was not willing to work with. I'm not sure what he meant there. And I'm also a little confused because I don't see anything in the bill that preserves the Race Federation as the entity that would oversee this property. So do you have any knowledge about any type of arrangement between the Raceway Federation and the Department of Parks and Rec?
I am not aware of any discussions that have taken place. I've said it before, and it's been said at our meetings before, is if Parks and Rec would like to oversee or run the raceway track, we can have those discussions. There isn't anything that says we can't. That would be potentially a memorandum of understanding or agreement. So we could enter into that. I haven't reached out to my colleague because of this current this situation with the Guam Racing Federation. And I'm really trying to be cautious because anything I say may potentially be used against our commission, right? And so I don't want that to happen. But there isn't anything that says we can't discuss this. All we're saying is allow the commissioners to do what it is that they need to do. We're not opposed to these activities. It's going to be taken under consideration, and we await or we continue to dialogue with our legal counsel. And I think we're moving much quicker than maybe previously. It's something that's on our agenda all the time, and wanting our commissioners to, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn for our commissioners. They will have those discussions. I hope I answered your questions.
Yeah, you did. And we're all aware of the history, right, and some of the shortcomings of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission that have been mentioned by some of my colleagues who spoke before me. But I would just say that in those instances that were mentioned, are any of those other tenants who may or may not be in arrears, are they mining the property that they're leasing from the Chamorro Land Trust, or is there any question that they're capitalizing on minerals that are contained in the people of Guam's land, ma'am?
I'm not aware of any other mining that's taking place. This much I will say. Since having been appointed to this position, I've reviewed several file folders of people or companies leasing. And going through those folders, I sit there like, why? How did this happen? How did this happen and why did it happen? Okay, I can't answer for what happened. My practice and policy is, okay, send this to our legal counsel. We need to act accordingly, right? With regard to the golf course, that's not done. I'm not done with the golf course. I'm going to pursue it. I hesitate to, and of course I'll always follow the instructions of my commissioners, even if we disagree, right? But I sit there and I'm just like baffled, why is this happening?
I agree, ma'am.
And I want to make sure we do it right. And if anybody knows me, you will know that I really want to make sure we're doing it right, because if we don't do it right, we're going to end up here again. And to ensure that we do it right, I seek legal counsel all the time. I need my legal counsel all the time. And there's a lot of issues, Senators, there are a lot of issues. You can talk to my team, all right? It's not within my authority to resolve that. We send it to legal counsel. Send it to legal counsel.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm just not comfortable with this idea that, oh, it's always been that way and the Chamorro Land Trust is screwed up with everyone else, so we're just going to let them screw this one up too, and never mind, mga.
No, sir. No, sir. I assure you, I sit there and my staff will tell you, okay, you guys, I am going to get fired, but this is the right thing to do. I'm going to get crucified in the media, but this is the right thing to do. Even if it means, Senator, and it's a balance. It's a really delicate balance. At this point in time, do I evict these individuals? Well, they're not authorized to be there. The law says they can't be there, so I'm sorry, you're going to have to go. I have to follow the law. And to the best of my ability, that's what we're doing. That's what this team is doing. And we're constantly seeking legal guidance to ensure that we're doing it right moving forward.
Yeah, I think you have a good bunch of commissioners, to include Mr. Herrera and Mr. Garrido, and I know that he has been one of the people who are up there at the property who started, sending up drones to, and you see it now when you're going in back road, turning to YIGO, you can see the part you guys are talking about where the drag strip is elevated on this cliff, and it's a 100-foot drop down, and now to hear that the plan is to level that and make how much money off the people of Guam. I mean, it's really mind-boggling. And I think that it's clear that with the different written testimony that we've received, and also with just your testimony and the testimony of the commissioners, that at least for me, there's enough of a cloud here that I'm just not comfortable with allowing the Racing Federation to continue to pursue this property until we've answered these questions, because there are just too many questions, too many concerns, and I'm just not comfortable with also allowing them to mosey on over to Department of Parks and Rec, where they might ask, fewer questions, and it's a more friendly environment, even though I would just say for the record that DPR has also testified against this bill, because they're saying they don't know how to run a racetrack, right? And so I think that the conversation has to be had between the Racing Federation leadership and these racers who are gathered out here, who have been convinced that this legislature is trying to take this racetrack. We're not trying to do any such thing. We're trying to hold the lessees, the leaseholder accountable, or the former leaseholder accountable, for all of these concerns about mining, because, like I said, I've hosted a million things up there at the track, and the track itself has kind of stayed the same, but what hasn't stayed the same is the level of excavation, the level of quarrying, the level of mining that has continued to happen on all these different parts of that Chamorro Land Trust property. And so I think that conversation has to be had, where they sit down the racers and say, okay, here's the deal, guys. We gotta address this. In the meantime, is there anyone else? Because I think that the testimony has shown that you guys are willing to continue to allow this property to be operated as a racetrack, granted that they go through the process and you find the interested parties. And, maybe it might be time to pass the torch. Some of the younger people out there who are into the racing, we've got a lot of capable people. Maybe we need to look at them forming some type of group to give it a shot, right? And run this property and run this property as a racetrack and not run it as a racetrack / mining corporation. That's all I have. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Barnett. Thank you again to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. I have no further questions for you, Situas Masi. Next, we have testimony from the Department of Parks and Rec. And since the bill, Section 2 of the bill is the meat of the bill, it says, this act shall classify lot number 7161-R1 YIGO Guam as a community recreation facility under 21 GCA 77110D, thus transferring authority and jurisdiction over the lot from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to the Guam Department of Parks and Recreation. They sent us a letter, June 23, 2023, to me, Speaker Hafaday, and good afternoon, Speaker Terlaje, and members of the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture. We humbly submit the official testimony of the Department of Parks and Recreation with regards to Bill number 56-37 COR, an act to classify lot 7161R1 YIGO Guam as a community recreation facility and to transfer authority of the lot from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to the Department of Parks and Rec. DPR has reviewed Bill 56-37 COR in its current form and does not support the proposed legislation. That being said, our department has no such mechanism or experience for assuming authority for property that contains leasehold benefit. Lastly, removing lot 7161R1 YIGO Guam from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission will result in the loss of thousands of dollars in revenue per month, which would adversely affect providing critically needed infrastructure for its property. Thus, our department respectfully defers to the experience and expertise of the CLTC regarding this proposed legislation. Thank you. Respectfully, Warren E. Pelletier, Director, Acting, and Jack E. Haddock III, Deputy Director. That's from today. All right, and now you've been waiting very patiently. I'd like to hear from former Senator Larry Casper Bauer, Vice Speaker Casper Bauer, if you'd like to testify. Fred Berdalio. Former Senator Limtiaco, Michael Limtiaco. There's Rumbo, Robert L.G. Beneventi, is he still here? Peter Alvarez was here, but I think he left. Angela Santos. David Berger, Jer Johnson. Oh. All right. All right, there are others, so we'll have another panel. Thank you for your patience. So we begin, thank you for waiting. Senator Casper Bauer, you may testify.
Sijus Masi, I've been here 3.5 hours, so thank you very much for allowing us to come on also. I've revised my notes, and again, I appreciate the 7 or 8 of you being here for this very, very important topic. I've revised my notes left and right, not quite sure where to start. But I noticed after the typhoon blew the leaves off of all these trees, there's an awful lot of people living on land trust land that have no authority to be there. And if you want me to show you them, I'll be happy to do it. And the land trust knows that they don't want to deal with those people living on land trust land. I've been told that by land trust people. When this bill got signed, the bill that I authored, that Senator Brown mentioned, Public Law 24-141 on February 23rd, 1998, 25 years and 4 months ago. At that time, believe it or not, I used to run. I've run the Ironman, the Honolulu Marathon, and others, and I was running from Two Lovers Point towards Marine Drive, and I was faced by four car lights facing me on a one-lane road with crowds cheering them on. It was not safe. The Raceway Park created an opportunity for those illegal racers to go onto a park and race with a lot of confidence and safety and for our safe. There's no question in my mind that it has met that purpose. But I wonder why the Land Trust is so concerned about this with all those illegal people, all those people living illegally on Land Trust land. Now, we don't hear about it. We heard about the golf course. What is really behind this effort? There's something behind this that hasn't come out. Why we're focusing on this. Anyway, is Southern High School on Land Trust land? It's vacant. Might as well take it back. I don't think the Southern High School was built on private property. It's vacant down there. It's gone to nothing. Might as well take it back too. Put some business on it. This property in YIGO was not used. Somebody had farmed a little bit on it, but it was just a piece of grass and jungle up there until the racetrack folks got in there. Now we want to put housing in there and everything else? My goodness, what a story. My notes have been revised, Senators, and I'm not quite sure what to say. There were over 3,500 people at the Lace Racetrack event from all social, economic, and racial backgrounds of this island. Very happy out there, seeing what was going on and joining in on it. They probably had more people come here for that event from off island than the tourist industry is bringing in. There were people came in from Australia, maybe New Zealand, Japan, Saipan, the United States, probably Hawaii and others came in for that event. And let me tell you, there were happy, very happy people from all walks of life out there at this event. It seems like we're trying to, throw out the baby instead of the wash. And I don't know, I have so many notes here, revised. I wish we really heard today what's behind this. We heard a lot of talk. I've been here 3.5 hours. Lots of talk from everybody. And if the Land Trust wants to do its job, I've heard from Land Trust people, they've allowed the rental of Land Trust property in the middle of nice Land Trust property space for these towers that are put up. Just a little space, really ruining a whole bunch of place. I think that's about all I have to say. I'm just very, very discouraged about this whole thing. It has saved lives off of the road. We're not against the racetrack, we're not against racing, but we got to do this. I've been in those races, and you know the racers. There's hundreds of them probably here wanting to talk. They're willing to take chances, and you know, if somebody made a mistake, let's deal with it. But my goodness, to throw the baby out with the whole thing is just unbelievable. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, Chairman, Senators.
Thank you, Senator Kasper Bauer. Fred Berdalio.
Buenas and Hafade, Madam Speaker, Terlaje, and members of the 37th Guam Legislature, Senator Nicolas, Senator Brown, and Senator Dwayne. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify on Bill 37-56 correction that effectively transfers the property from the Chamorro Land Trust, and we're talking about the area where the raceway track is, and over to the jurisdiction of the Department of Parks and Recreation. As a nephew of the late statesman and former Senator Paul Berdalio with the enactment of the Chamorro Land Trust Act, he was a type of business person, if he was alive today, would say he has nothing against, just like what has been said about racing, about the opportunities for people to get into that profession, you know, and generating revenue. But he also had this value about the injustices of land takings that had happened a long time ago, and that's why this Chamorro Land Trust Act was conceptualized. And the focus on this bill, again, is just to change the landlord from the Chamorro Land Trust to Parks and Rec. The Department of Parks and Rec doesn't have a mission to land restoration program, what the Chamorro Land Trust Act's mission is. And the program, what it was meant, we even had a case, I believe, in court that challenged that. It wasn't anything about race, it was political. It was an injustice that happened way back between 1898 and 1968. And the revenues or the proceeds from any of these commercial leases should benefit the beneficiaries, the mandate of what the Chamorro Land Trust Act and why it was formulated. And there are many instances, not just in Guam, but in Hawaii and other areas in the states where the native tribes or the indigenous people, there is some symbolism in making sure that there's a law that gives and recognizes injustices of land taking. And one of the things too that I just came across is Hawaii, Circuit Hawaii, a private developer wants to do a racetrack in the island of Oahu. So you know, there's talk about, if it wasn't Guam Raceway Federation, could a private sector developer come over and propose a private-public partnership with government of Guam or something for a racetrack? It has nothing to do, I believe, with the opposition that, and I've watched the testimony with the Chamorro Land Trust, with Alice and the commissioners, has nothing to do with opposing racing. There is potential litigation that's going on, and I trust the court, a system if there's litigation that's going on. I also trust, too, that the Chamorro Land Trust, under the leadership of Alice and the commissioners now, will have a lot of unfinished business to do, as like what Senator Casper said, because it isn't just only the racetrack. There's the golf course that was mentioned, and there's other entities of individuals occupying land trust property. A lot of unfinished business, and that's why I say, that's why I will contend and I would argue that the timing of transferring this property from Chamorro Land Trust to Department of Parks and Recreation, to me, it's not good. And even the Department of Parks and Recreation submitted their testimony that they oppose it too. So I would hope that our lawmakers consider that. You know, today I was sharing with one of my friends, Ronald, that I'm wearing the Young Men's League of Guam pin. It's called the Inetan Lalahan Guahan. It's a non-profit organization where my father was part of that organization. A lot of prominent business people and political leaders were there, and their mission was to preserve, perpetuate the Chamorro language and the culture and education, through education and community outreach. But one thing that was very certain is that we're intricately linked to land. And a lot of the beneficiaries, right now there's an estimate of 54,000 native Chamorros on our island, if we really want to look at that from a political perspective, and what they are watching as this hearing is going on, and what's going to protect them. And it's interesting too, because my Uncle Paul, when he was a senator here, just like each and every one of you senators would say, the Inafresi, the Chamorro Pledge. But there's a line there that I believe is the most important and it's significant to me, senators, and that's the one that says, "Uafresan maisadzu para baihu protehi zanhu defendi, I hengengi, I cultura, I lenguaje, I ari, I hanam tano chamorro," especially that I hanam tano chamorro. To protect that. What is the message that we say that in the middle of all these challenges that the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission are confronted with and are working on right now with this situation, not only with the Guam Raceway Federation with the situation, but with the golf course and others, that we pull this, that we take away some authority over these areas, that they have more sort of like understanding and experience to do some of this unfinished business that may take place in a court or may take place too, where even the Office of the Attorney General, who probably is watching this too, to see what's going on. The Chamorro Land Trust, even the word trust, that trust goes both ways too, but I believe and I have confidence, and that's why I said my opposition to the transfer to the Department of Parks and Recreation, I just believe isn't really timely now, isn't solution, and I believe it's better kept within the Chamorro Land Trust inventory now, so they can do the unfinished business of getting to the bottom line of what can be done and how some corrections can be made and what are the lessons learned from this. Thank you, Sujus Masi.
Sijus Masi, Chief Berdalio. I think I called Peter Alvarez, wasn't here. Rumbo, Mr. Beneventi. Senator Limtiaco.
Hopade, Speaker Terlaje, Senator Dwayne, Senator Brown, Senator Barnett, Senator Nicolas, Senator Quinata. Sujus Masi for having the opportunity to provide testimony for this bill. I believe the public hearing was well done. It really shed a lot of light on some of the questions I know that the racing community has as well, and I think Senator Barnett kind of made or inferred that potentially that GRF should, provide more information to the racing community. I think that's a good start. I'm not necessarily here to support the bill. I'm here to support the racing community because I grew up with brothers that have been in this sport since we were 8 years old, and the type of people that it produces, some of them in the building right now are, contributors to our community. They employ people. We spend a lot of money to participate in this sport, and to not have a place to do it or to have an unreasonable expectation on what a racing community would have to pay for a facility like this needs to be taken into context because the sport is already expensive as it is. And I think from the testimony that I heard from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission is that they don't want to evict the racing community. And I think that's pretty unanimous amongst all the senators from what I'm hearing as well. So we want to hold you to that. You need to find a place for us, and it needs to be a place that can provide a safe environment rather than people doing on the road. It needs to be a place where you're not trespassing on private property like everybody's doing up at Nimitz Hill. I mean, just look at look at what's going on up there. That's not public land. And it can't take 3 decades like the land that Commissioner Herrera had referred to that's already with Parks and Rec, that's designated for a speedway, that has been on the books forever, but Parks and Rec has never developed that land for the racing community. So, you know, when the bill attempts to move the land into Parks and Recreation, yet there's already land designated for the speedway. But what good is that if you don't do anything with it? What has Parks and Recreation done with that property? At least with this land that they have up at the YIGO Raceway right now, it's developed. You know, a lot of the business community that's represented here today have put the work in to develop that property and make it the raceway that it is right now. The racetrack as a commercial venture is a loser. You will never make money running a raceway. It's just too expensive. Most of the work that goes into that raceway right now is donated. It's donated by companies that, yes, are part of the community and some that are not. But there is no commercial venture for a raceway that I see here on Guam. And I hope that you can take that into consideration when you are discussing how to find a home for the racing community, because you're not going to get 10% of an $8.4 million piece of land. You're not going to find that type, you're not going to have any respondents to your RFP that are willing to pay the CHAMORRO Land Trust that much money. So if that's the goal, saying yes, we support the raceway, and we're going to put out an RFP for it, and we're going to get the best respondent that's going to pay us the most money, I can guarantee you it's not going to be the racing community. It's going to be some other commercial venture. And so that whole logic on saying, yeah, I support the raceway, but saying I'm going to put an RFP out, and you're by law, you have to have the most responsive and best price bidder that you have to award it to. You know, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get a bunch of people standing in line to say, I want to run a racetrack for a commercial venture. It's just not a moneymaker. So something has to be done, whether it's with CHAMORRO Land Trust or whether it's with the legislature. We need our leaders that we've elected up here to find a solution for us that's economical, that can be afforded by the racing community as well. But I do want to say thank you for the opportunity to put out the public hearing. Thank you for following the 120-day rule. I wish when I was in the legislature, we had that rule. We don't. Probably 2 over there that had something to do with it. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Limtiaco. Angela Santos.
Buenas. I don't want to put it too close to my mouth. I got a loud voice and pretty projecting at a distance already. So, if you don't mind, Hafide Guao, si Angela Santos. I used to sit on the commission for the Land Trust. I resigned last year in April, and then I decided to run for senator, make a bid for a senator, to assist the Land Trust in whatever issues that I had come across and seen and what we had addressed when I did sit on the Land Trust, in amending the law accordingly. Because everybody likes to say, I don't want to go against the law, I don't want to break the law. Nobody wants to break the law, right? But we have to also address the issues and the intentions of the Land Trust itself and why it was conceptualized. Please forgive me, Senator Kaspar. Why it came to fruition. The souls and the time, the sweat, the blood of many, many, many of our CHAMORRO people looking forward to the future of our kids. We always say future generations, future generations. I came in here not knowing exactly what I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to hear everybody's address on how they interpreted this bill. And I mean, if I can say it, I don't think it's pretty anything. I'm in its entirety, I'm not for this bill. I'm against the bill. I'm not in favor of it, right? I do not support it at all, in its entirety. It's just saying I'm going to take it from the Land Trust and give it to the Parks and Recs. That's all it's saying, right? And I mean, we have this conversation now, but why didn't we have this conversation before we introduced the bill? To have more substantive words and get everybody to an understanding. Senator Barnett addressed it earlier. Maybe, I mean, at this point, hearing everybody speak, you guys, I commend you, Senator San Nicolas. Thank you for putting it out. I know your heart. I know your heart, and I appreciate you. But unfortunately, this is not the way to go. I know how you wanted to address it. They brought up so many times. The main thing is, if you bring it if you give it and address it to the Parks and Recs, who's to say that it's not going to go back into the hands of the Guam Association Federation of Raceway, right? Who's to say that it's not going to go back into their management? We don't know that. So if we're going to set law, let's set it. I mean, with the land trust, let's address it there. So pretty much here's what where I'm leading at with hearing everybody's. I came in, I went to the front, and I addressed the racers because they're our people. We address them first. Let's see what's going on. I sat on the Land Trust Commission, so I understand fully where they are coming from. They just need to follow the rules and regs, which is placed upon them in law. So do not blame right? Don't blame the Land Trust for doing what they are told to do by the law, right? They are following the law. And we want to talk about why the Land Trust has come to this point right now. Let's ask former administrative directors. Let's ask former governors why they took out so much out of the survey fund. And how come it wasn't replenished? Let's ask that, right? Why is the Land Trust in this position now? Man, we can address so many things. Why couldn't this have been done before it became bill form or proposition form? Why? Why not? That's how it's supposed to be. We go into our own, the people of Guam are constituents. We work for them. Let's speak with them. Let's be mediators. A great leader sits with their people. No. So at this point, I wholeheartedly agree with Senator Barnett. Let's sit down. If it's not going, I don't know how or what the Land Trust intends to right now. If we cannot have it get into a litigating situation and try to mediate it before it even gets there, we already know the issues. Let's hear the Land Trust out. If they can open up their open meetings a little bit more, that'd be great. Let's hear the Land Trust. What has been the issues with whoever is managing the raceway right now, right? Because I've heard from the racers, I'm not sure. I just know that they want to kick us out. Man, it's not you. It's the way it's being managed and the way that the Land Trust is not being the contract. It's a binding contract, right? You have a contract with somebody leasing your house. They do not keep the grass at an inch tall. From days in, days and months, years, you keep addressing that same issue. It's not mining. It's just, hey, man, that's how I like my grass to be. Just maintaining the ground. So, talk about conservation. There's issues like that, too. So, it's not mining, but you hold them to that contract that you ask them to maintain. It's not unreasonable. You're making a profit. You're sharing it with the Land Trust to help them fulfill the duties in which it was intended. Thank you so much. That is all I have to say. I appreciate your time. Sainamasi.
Sainama Asim Santos. David Berger. Dave Berger.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And good afternoon to all the senators here. I'm here today wearing two hats. First hat is I am the treasurer of the Marianas Racing Association, which is a nonprofit organization up in the CNMI involved in promoting motorsports. I submitted written testimony, and I'm not going to read that here because you can read that. What I want to say is that the Guam Raceway Park for decades has been a community recreation facility. I think the agreement between Guam Racing Federation and the CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission is a mechanism to produce revenues to the Land Trust Commission. If we look at community recreation facilities, think of a baseball field or a football field. Those are not set up in the same way and not intending to raise revenues for an organization. Now, I only want to, my other role here is I happen to be the auditor for the Guam Racing Federation. My firm has been auditing the Guam Racing Federation since roughly 2013. We took it over from another firm. You know, I have my own accounting firm. I run the Saipan office. I come to Guam once a month. So what was mentioned earlier was transparency, which I believe is a good thing. And if we're going to be transparent, let's have the community of Guam understand that the Guam Racing Federation has paid the Chamorro Land Trust Commission $3.6 million over the term of the agreement. If we're going to try to calculate a rate per acre, can we use the actual money that was spent and not just a $4,000 a month lease agreement? So I just want that to be on the record. It's $3.6 million. It's not $900,000, although the $900,000 may be the lease payments. I have two more points. One point is, I'm not sure I understand, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission calls this a commercial lease. You know, I haven't looked at everything in the law, but in a commercial lease, it also says that you can't sublease to anybody. Now, would it make sense to allow the Guam Racing Federation to sublease to other tenants, perhaps a gas station, and share that revenue with the Chamorro Land Trust Commission? I can't think of any gas stations on Route 15. I think it would be a good thing for the island. And if that was allowed on this property, then some of that revenue could go to the Land Trust Commission. Or any tenant sublease that they allowed. The last point I want to make, representatives of the Land Trust Commission talked about maybe wanting to put houses on this property. If you put houses on a property, I think you're going to level the land. And that's, you know, what we call grading, leveling out the land. And so I just have a question on that. The current license holder has been painted as raping the land. So if the Chamorro Land Trust Commission graded the land and built houses, is that a lesser level of sexual assault? Is that, you're going to be stripping the land and leveling it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Jeer Johnson.
Half a day, Speaker, Terlaje, and Senators. My name is Jerry Johnson. I'm the president of Hawaiian Rock Products. Hawaiian Rock Products has been, it's our 65-year anniversary this year. I've been with Hawaiian Rock as president for 39 of those, so over half of those years. You know, we have about 400 employees working for us, all local employees working in Manila. And as the name implies, Hawaiian Rock Products, the last part of it means that we do products, we supply products made out of rock. So rock is the key to our business. You know, I'm sorry, Senator, we haven't been able to crush rock because we didn't have power, so you didn't get your hammer mill sand when you wanted it, but it took us 3 weeks to get power. But anyway, we've been running a quarry in the Manila for that 65-year period. That quarry is running out of rock. There's an end in sight when we won't have any more rock. So about 2006, Henry Simpson came to us and asked us to help grade the raceway park. And we had a plan that was developed, and we started grading that property according to that plan. Part of that agreement was with them was we would remove the aggregate, haul it to our Fidian quarry, crush it down, sell it as incorporated in our products. 50% of the money was to go to the Chamorro Land Trust. 50% of the money was to go to the Raceway Park so they could build the Raceway Park. We also participated in the gross receipts tax by doing some asphalt paving on the Raceway Park that was needed for the drag strip and the oval and other things that they needed on the Raceway Park. That was paid to us at cost, plus I think about 5% for administrative fee. So it was not a profitable thing for us to do that work under the GRT monies. How did we account for the rock? Every truckload of rock that we hauled, we had to haul it to Manilao, so it wasn't hauled through some back road to our quarry. Across the roads, we either used our own trucks or rental trucks. Every truckload was accounted for, and we did a calculation of how many cubic yards went into each truck. We documented that every day, how many truckloads, and at the end of the month, we calculated all that, and then we reported it. We had to pay the Raceway Park, the Chamorro Land Trust, with the truck drivers based upon that. We also had a processing fee that we had to pay to the Judge Bamba estate, where our quarry is located, for materials hauled in to our property unprocessed. We had to calculate how much we took out of the Fidian quarry. We've taken materials from other areas. It all had to be documented. We have auditors that audit our books and look at those numbers. They spend 3 months looking at our numbers, looking at how that's calculated, and to verify how much we sold and compare it to how much rock we put in. The Bamba Trust requires us to hire auditors to verify the numbers to make sure we pay them each month. So I'm a little bit concerned that we've been accused of taking away or not paying for what we've taken from the rock. That's how Hawaiian Rock handles it. I'm not sure about Perez Brothers or how Smithbridge does it in the rock they've taken. But we talked a little earlier about the Dwayne did a study. We gave them the numbers that we had of what we'd taken. I think Smithbridge gave them the numbers. Perez Properties gave them, or Perez Brothers, former Perez Brothers, gave them the numbers that they had taken out. And they did I think a original plan of the property and compared it to some aerial surveys that we did and compared it to how much Perez Brothers had paid for royalty and how much Hawaiian Rock had paid for royalty. And the numbers came out very close. As a matter of fact, it appears from the numbers that we overpaid. More material was paid for than actually calculated. But it was not a significant number. It was very, very close. So, I think the amount we paid was to the Chamorro Land Trust was like 1.6 million, and another 1.6 million to the Raceway Park for all those materials we took out, and then we had to pay the Bamba Trust for the processing fee and everything. What we paid for the material is more than what we pay the Bamba Trust for the material we take from that property. It's more than we take from the current fee of $2 a cubic yard is more than we pay the Perez Properties, which is immediately adjacent to the Raceway. I think we pay them $1.50 a cubic yard. So it was a fair market value. It was a little less when we started, but it was a fair market value paid for the rock. We have to put another $15 to $20 in processing fee into the rock to get it to the point where we can add it to our concrete, we can add it to our asphalt, sell hammer mill sand and all the other products we sell. And so we've invested over $100 million in equipment over the years in order to do all of this. So, it's very expensive to produce this rock. And we don't make money if it rains or we have typhoons or shut down with power for weeks. I mean, it's a difficult business, a high capital intensive business, and that's what we do with the rock. So we support the raceway. We volunteer our water trucks to go out and keep the dust down when they have their smoking wheels. We use our sweepers to dust the track. Our employees go out and work there for free, volunteer. We donate money for the events. So we're very supportive of the raceway. I mean, whether it's run by, the Chamorro Land Trust or the Parks and Recreation, we want to support it and keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I think that completes this panel. Senators, do you have any questions for this panel? Senator Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Not so much a question. I think in looking at this issue, I mean, it's one thing to address the excavation of material at the racetrack to actually build the racetrack. I think the concern we would like to, certainly I would like to see addressed as to whether or not there's more quarrying that occurred beyond that. That's the issue. I think we've reiterated time and time again this afternoon, I'm not in opposition to the racetrack or the services. I mean, I was there with Senator Kasperbauer back in the 90s when the legislation was approved. That's the issue, and I don't want that to be clouded, and I certainly will await our public auditor's report to see where we are with that as the underlying issue. And I also have concern, I don't want to see land taken out of the Chamorro Land Trust. I mean, if we're going to create a land trust, then we need to abide by that. We can't just conveniently take it out whenever we want to because we have any other issue before us. If we're going to do that, we might as well get rid of it and tell our people we don't agree with supporting our Chamorro people or others now that the new federal requirements have put in place of who's eligible and who's not eligible. But that's the real underlying issue I think that needs to be addressed. I do see this issue being clouded with the, if you don't support this bill, you're anti-racetrack. But there's some questions with the land trusts that are there, and I'm sure, Senator Kasper, you agree, we have no intent to support any improper activity. Has it occurred? I don't know. It's alleged to have occurred. And if it comes out in the audit that that's the case, then I assume the respective authorities will deal with it. But it does cloud this particular bill for me in voting for it at this time. I have no argument with the work and the investment that anyone has done. Senator, you brought up about the issue, Senator Limtiaco, well, the leaders need to provide a place. Well, good luck. Where's the funding going to come from? That's the issue. I mean, I understand we have a interest in racing. No one has an objection to that. It's just a question is this property has been properly managed? Because a 50-foot or 100-foot drop from the racetrack kind of concerns me. And I haven't gone out and seen the contours of this property, but that does concern me. I mean, is there a permit to quarry on this property? Clearing and grading is one thing. I worked at EPA for 4 years. Clearing and grading is one thing. Quarrying is another. If the intent was to quarry for revenue, then that's another question. That to me is a separate question from clearing and grading the property to construct the racetrack. So I don't have any questions, but I simply wanted to clarify, at least from my perspective, what I would see before I'd even consider entertaining this bill on the floor. So with that, Madam Speaker, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Dwayne? No questions. Senator Quinata, questions for this panel?
Thank you guys for your testimony. That is all.
Thank you. Senator Nicolas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Senator Larry Kasperbauer, for your testimony. I'm right alongside with you. I do want to protect this property and designate it as a recreational facility to keep that property for the raceway. I'm just trying to mirror your success with trying to get this passed. I'm going to do whatever we can. Sir, your name for the record again, sir? I'm sorry.
My name is David Berger,
And
just like hamburger.
Mr. Berger? You said you were the auditor for some of the stuff that you're...
Yes, sir. I've been auditing the Guam Racing Federation.
So how does that make you feel that you have members of the government here questioning you're a certified accountant or?
Yes, I'm a CPA.
Yes, and so you audited the books.
I did.
And to your knowledge, best of your knowledge, everything has been done properly.
Yeah, we're not fully up to date with the audits. COVID had an impact on that, but I think we took over in 2013 and did every year up through 2020. And we're satisfied that it's a pretty simple financial statement. There's not really a lot of transactions that happen, and it's been transparent, and everything checks out.
Okay. All right. Everything checks out, right, for the record?
Yes.
All right. So, again, is there any error, impropriety, or anything at all? Like nothing you could find? Irregularities?
No, there's not findings. I mean, there's one person doing QuickBooks, so you
Oh, okay. That's like me during tax time.
you can't really have segregation of duties in such a small organization, and there's been a lot of volunteering
Okay.
to keep the thing going.
Right, and you do a lot of volunteer work with the Raceway and the Federation. You donate a lot of your time.
I donate. This is like the lowest audit fee that we have in our entire firm, and despite that, I still donate back part of it.
Is there any money to be made in Raceway operations?
No.
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 So these guys are not, going like gangbusters and stuff and making all this cash, or are they?
No.
No.
It's really community recreation oriented. Very hard to make significant money
Okay.
in this kind of operation.
Thank you, sir. And, sir, you're Mr. Johnson, sir, your understanding of the topography there, is that the type of material on this Chamorro Land Trust land, is it worth quite a bit of money?
The rock in that area is high-quality rock. We need a special rock for asphalt paving, and that particular property happened to have that quality of rock on it. For concrete, other products, we don't need that high-quality rock, but because of the tough specifications to build our roads, build the airports, we need high-quality rock.
So from a business perspective, and you're into that kind of industry, the best use of the property would be turning that and leveling it into a quarry.
It would make a beautiful quarry, but
it would make a beautiful quarry, wouldn't it?
That's, there's other properties on the island that we can also look at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And so having the Raceway sitting right on top of that property just is not good for quarry business.
No, it wouldn't be
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Angela, Ms. Santos, and Chief Bordallo. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. No further questions.
Thank you, Senator Nicolas. Senator Barnett.
I'd like to thank the panel for their testimony today, but I did have a question for Mr. Berger with the audits. So can you describe the process? I'm not an auditor, not an accountant, nowhere near, but I'm just curious how you're able to, or would you call the audits that you conducted thorough and successful?
Absolutely. We only took over in 2013, so a lot of this activity had already happened. A lot of this payment to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. The activity in the years that I audited, I've got all the financial statements right here. It's really simple. There's not a lot of revenue that was generated.
I don't know, because, he's saying they invested $100 million in equipment, they paid the Raceway Federation $1.6 million, and they wouldn't be investing that type of equipment or making those types of payouts if it wasn't good rock, right? It's the good rock, Mr. Johnson?
100 million.
High grade.
The $100 million is invested in our
I
Padilla
know,
quarry and
I know,
and equipment,
yeah. But I'm just saying
yeah.
that if it wasn't lucrative and if it wasn't a huge moneymaker, that we wouldn't see that type of investment from your company, correct?
You mean our business is?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's lucrative. You know, it also is lucrative for the government. I mean, we pay gross receipts tax, we pay income tax, we pay, you know, property taxes on all the properties we have. I would calculate the government makes more money than we do, you know, for our business. So
I
I'm sorry.
might disagree with that.
No, I got.
But Mr. Berger, so I'm just curious because we had the public auditor and I know that they have had difficulty conducting a thorough audit because they haven't been able to get all the documentation that they need. So I'm just curious as to how you were able to get that documentation and not our public auditor.
So I'm going to reiterate that a lot of this extraction and payment happened in the years prior to my audits. In my audit years, there's very little activity. We have all the bank statements. We trace all the transactions in and out. You know, we're not trying to calculate the cubic yards of material. And it's not such a big number in these later years. But as far as what's recorded in the books, it's supported by the bank statements, supporting documents, invoices, checks, receipts. It's pretty easy to audit.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. I have a couple questions. So, Senator Casper-Byer, I want to thank you for being the author of the bill, the original bill, law, Public 24-141, which authorized $8 million, $9 million at that time at tax credits. And it said that the Federation desires to fund the development of such a project through the donations of labor, design plans, material, and a long-term lease for the venue, but believes the cost to be too high for donations alone, and that's why we gave, or your legislature gave the tax credits. And also was going to give tax credits for the private property that this describes that this land was, raceway was going to be built on. Nothing in this law described that this would be put on Chamorro Land Trust property at that time. Nothing. It in fact talks about the business privilege tax that they would give to the landowners and how the government would have an interest in that land despite it not being government land. Different things, but I'm grateful you did this, and I think we're all still in support of that concept that and we've seen that the tax credits have for the most part been used, not all the way, but for the most part. And so again, I'm hoping we can continue with that intention, right? I wanted to see, there's nothing in this bill that we're looking at that it's going to transfer the property to the Parks and Rec. It doesn't say anything about a lease. It doesn't say anything about allowing quarrying on the property. It doesn't say anything except that it's going to be a community recreational facility, which according to statute, I mean, we've seen different kinds, but the statute says it's going to be managed by the mayors, and the mayors have to take care of it, maintain it, everything. It doesn't talk at all about a lease to the Guam Raceway Federation or any other racing association. And I was just curious. So when I had talked about earlier, I was looking at records from GITA up to 2017. The $2 million had been received by the Chamorro Land Trust. And you said up to 2020, $3.6 million had been paid to the Chamorro Land Trust. But in your review of this as the auditor, so you are the treasurer for the Marianas Racing Association, but you are also like the independent auditor for the Guam Raceway Federation?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I am. I'm independent with respect to Guam Racing Federation. I have no interest in...
And so in order for you to do your audit, you reviewed the statements that came from the Raceway Federation, is that correct?
we get their QuickBooks backup, and we get their bank statements, and then we go through the QuickBooks backup and select transactions for testing. We also confirm the bank balances. We look at 941s, W1. There's
Yes.
a lot
yeah.
of testing.
All right, yes. So those are the Raceway Federation's records. Some of that we've seen, they come from the, like Dwayne and Associates also submitted a report where they, like you said, Mr. Johnson, that they get the information from the people doing the mineral extraction. And you submit that, they compile it, they submit that to the Racing Federation, and the Racing Federation has submitted that to CHAMORRO Land Trust, and that's where we get these amounts, right? The amounts that I talked about, and I'm sure the amounts that you're auditing. So I don't think there's any dispute that that's what the company said was removed from the place, and that the Raceway Federation is saying they agree. What the companies are telling them they're removing, that's what's being removed, right? The Parks and Rec, the law that allows 50-year lease to the raceway, right of first refusal, actually allows for other uses as well, such as the gas station you talked about. But transfer to Parks and Rec, like I said, does not talk about any lease, does not discuss at all any other possible use except for community recreation, and I have not seen any Department of Parks and Rec property on Guam being used for commercial purposes like gas stations or anything. So that would be unique, I think, for us. Mr. Johnson, I appreciate your testimony. Hawaiian Rock is one of the people who were the beneficiaries of the tax credits and your work on this project. So you discussed about the aggregate that was removed and how you account for it, and we've seen the records that you have submitted and they've been received by CHAMORRO Land Trust as well through the Guam Raceway Federation. Was any of the aggregate that was taken from this property sold to the government of Guam for the asphalt? We know that Hawaiian Rock is the sole provider of paving for the Guam's roads.
Not in the form that's taken from the property. When we mine it on the property, we try to actually keep it in as large a size as will go through our crushers. And we take it to our crushers in the bottom of our quarry in Manila, and then we process that for asphalt. So most of the concrete aggregates come from our Manila quarry and others. But and then, yes, it's put in our products, and it's put into the asphalt that we contract for to do village roads now, and the federal highway roads, airports, military projects,
right.
All of that.
And
we're involved with all those.
The aggregate from this raceway property is part of that, right?
Yeah, it's part of it, but we
I know you have other quarries, yes.
Yeah, no, when the cease and desist came out in 2016, we haven't done anything on the property except for, leveling some areas that we obligated to level. We haven't extracted any material from there. We are leveling property for the Paris properties that is adjacent, just like Smithbridge is doing it for the Kramer properties adjacent. And what's unusual about that property is it goes right to the raceway, and there's a ridge there that you can't just dig a vertical face and just take out the Paris properties. We took down the ridge, and we did a calculation before we did that on how much was CHAMORRO Land Trust property and how much was Paris property, and we haven't paid that yet. We haven't accounted for it. It's about 20,000 cubic yards. We tried to pay for it, and the CHAMORRO Land Trust wouldn't accept the check. So we owe that to the government still, or to the CHAMORRO Land Trust. But that's the only way we could level that property. So we haven't left any 100-foot vertical cliffs that you're talking about.
All right. But that was done after the stop order?
It was, yeah.
All right. And
Yeah.
are you aware of an Department of Parks and Rec owning any quarry or quarrying any of their land?
Department of Parks and Rec?
Yes.
No,
All right.
yeah. I mean, for a later date, we'll be talking to you about other Chamorro Land Trust properties that,
Yes.
you know, we think could be a win-win-win for everybody, but that's a later date.
So what is the, well, okay, thank you. And thank you to all of you for your testimony, very helpful. Si Diyos masi. Thank you. We'll have the next panel. Mariana Wenden, Annalise Wenden, Joey Crisostomo, Tony Sablan, former Senator Randy Cunliffe, Ron LaGuardia, Henry Simpson, and Chris Nelson. Okay, if you're going to reset the audio, it'll be 1 minute.